Yo, welcome to Directly to You. It's episode 14, I believe. I'm joined by, well, first of all, I'm AJ of Redirect. You know me. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm joined by Pete of FlipScreen Games for the first time in a long time. He's been here before.
What's going on?
But it's the first time.
Thanks for having me back.
Of course, man. We're talking about Pokemon. You've been on here when we're not talking about Pokemon, but you're like a go-to person to talk about Pokemon. So like, it's a good reintroduction.
Yeah, we were saying before we jumped on that it's like, we used to have you and I would exchange coming on each other's shows to talk about Pokemon at least, a couple times a year, and it's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a while. And I was beginning to explain, but I feel like this is a good primer to actually put in the episode because I'm going to explain how this specifically happened. I went in Sierra's chat. I was she was talking about Pokemon and some other way. I think she might have been talking about the Digimon game, and we were talking about how that relates to Pokemon and something. And I was working on a Pokemon video because I wanted to update my thoughts on how I feel about ZA before ZA comes out. Because I like to have little checkpoints to refer back to, so I could basically be like, I told y'all 10 years later. So I was like telling her about that. And then my general thought process, she was like, you got to talk to Pete, because Pete said something very similar. And I was like, did he? Because I feel like we're usually mostly in line with Pokemon, but I feel like this in particular was something that we've been like, I don't know about that, but I was talking about.
We definitely have one or two big areas where I feel like we get in the weeds in the ways, like, I feel like we agree about what we want the outcome to be, but we argue about the ways we think they should try to get there,
yes.
Which is so fun to get in the weeds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need that. I need it. So yeah, that's why this happened. I was like, because in my head, I'm just like this all the time with everybody. It's like there's certain guests that I've had before, and in my head, I'm like, yo, if you want to come on, just hit me up. But if not, then you must got stuff going on. But since she told me, I was like, oh, then he might be, might be down. So I hit you up. But for the most part, it's just an open door policy for me. I don't really, unless it's somebody that I haven't previously worked with, I don't really think to go out of my way to invite people, because I just think if you want to be on, you're going to hit me up.
Yeah, I do the same thing where like I don't do enough of the reaching out to be like, hey, you should come on back.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, surely if you are interested, you'll let me know. But
exactly,
somebody's got to make that first touch. So Thanks for inviting me back.
Of course. So let's get into it. So I don't know if you saw the video, but the initial premise, or not the premise, the initial premise, but the development of the video was like, when ZA first got announced, I was like kind of sad. I was like disappointed that ZA got announced, because I don't like the idea of the Legends games being a franchise. In the same way that people thought that Let's Go was going to become a franchise, and then that didn't happen. But things from Let's Go found their way into the mainline Pokemon games. And that, to me, is where I wanted Arceus to be, especially after playing it. Because when I first played Arceus, I was like, okay, this game doesn't feel substantial enough to be a Pokemon game. Like, in the way that I think about Pokemon, especially in the year of our Lord 2025, and at the time, 2022, I was like, Pokemon games usually have way longer tails than this. And in fact, even that game, I feel they kind of like deter you from wanting to do the like old school Pokemon thing, where it's like, I'm going to start my save over and I'm going to use a different team and blah, blah. They kind of want your Pokemon save to be like a living document. And for me, Arceus kind of fell flat in that regard. So I was like, okay, well, hopefully this is just a tech demo. Hopefully this is them like being like, okay, let's try action RPG out and we'll see if it works in the future. So when they confirmed Legends EA, before we actually see gameplay, I'm like, damn.
Okay. So I have a lot to respond to there. Okay. I'll start by saying, I think that's interesting, because I always hoped that Legends would become a franchise in its own right, because I think that, and we've talked about this to death, right? Yeah. The mainline quote unquote Pokemon games have a lot of baggage, right? Like there's a lot of expectation, and there are certain things that if you change, you'll upset a lot of people. You'll create a lot of, dissonance with the fact that you on some level can bring forward, Pokemon from every single generation into the modern games. Like, I think that the fact that it needs to juggle all those things makes the margins of what a Pokemon game can be, like a mainline Pokemon game can be, I think they can only vary so much, right? Where even in Scarlet Violet, right, where we went for the open world thing for the first time, ultimately you're hitting the same beats as we did back in Red Blue, right? Where it's
Right.
like you're going and collecting gym badges, and there's some side content where you're going to deal with a criminal organization and you'll have a rival, and you'll fill your Pokedex, right? If you're a real nerd. And then there's post game content.
Yes.
And I think that, you know, I'm interested to see how that new, what's it called? Arena, right? Is the mobile one that's going to be coming out. That's the new
Champions.
Champions. Yes, thank you. I'm interested to see how Champions influences how they approach the main games. But I think what I liked about Legends was this idea of we have this other thing that has this kind of like immediate caveat, right out the gate, that it's not going to be exactly what you expect from a traditional Pokemon experience. And therefore, like, them experimenting with things like making a game that is more catching oriented than battle oriented, right? Or, the changes that they made to the battle system, right? Some of which were very substantial.
Right.
I think that as a series existing is actually better for the mainline games if, to your point, they learn from the cool stuff from those games.
So
because I think that if they had taken some of the best elements of Arceus and put them in Scarlet Violet, right? If those games were made one after the other, not simultaneously,
yes,
I think that game would have been much better.
So here's where I deviate. And I felt very similar to you for a long time. And when I was making this video, I went back and watched older Pokemon videos, because part of the video is like me being like, I think that I have a pretty good read on like where their head's at a lot of the time, because I'm thinking the same things around the time that they make these changes. Like before Let's Go came out, I'm like, random encounters they're busted. Like they gotta go. And then Let's Go came out, and then we stopped getting the random encounters, and there's other things that I brought up in the video and stuff like that. And that's how, and I felt like this for longer than I felt like with the overworld encounters were a thing. Like, to be fair, I also felt like this then in terms of the battle system. I think that got too long in the tooth, because when Pokemon first was introduced, it was what it was because that's what it needed to be to paint the picture that it was trying to paint. In the same way that the original Zelda was what it needed to be to paint the picture it was trying to paint on the hardware that it was released on. Fast forward 30 years, we got Breath of the Wild, because they're like, oh wait, let's update what this picture is, because we have new tools to make a more accurate picture. Whereas Pokemon has not, at least up until that point, made that update. It's updating the picture based on the last picture that they drew, or it was up until, I'd argue, Sun and Moon. Sun and Moon is where they kind of were like, can we do more? Can we change more of these things that at the time felt like tenets? And it's very like well established within the community. Certain things that, like, how they talk about it at least, are like irrevocable. It's like, this is what a Pokemon game is. And I've just noticed that in real time, those things have been knocked down and lessened as we move forward. And I know that when I first talked about it, I was like a lot more precious about those people, where I'm like, oh, well, it won't be a Pokemon game if the battle system's different. So maybe there's like an option to like, now I'm scorched earth. I'm like, I don't like, because in looking at the data and looking at the numbers and looking at how games are received that have made bigger shifts after being so long in the tooth with their mechanics for similar, like, scared to like shake the hornet's nest, they're usually received much better unless they fall flat. I think Champions kind of gives them a safety net if it does fall flat, but I think that the what they gain from just making the leap is a lot bigger than what they lose if that leap doesn't land with the people that love that are hardcore fans right now. Like, I think
I want to push back on that a little bit because I think I would agree with you if Scarlet and Violet were not like the best selling games in the franchise.
But Scarlet and Violet is exactly why I feel the way that I feel, to be clear. And
because
you expand on your
feel
point.
Like it meaningfully bucked the trend.
Huh?
Do you feel like it meaningfully like bucked the trend? Like you feel like that game was enough of a diversion?
Yes.
From
and I feel like
the formula.
I feel like Sword and Shield too. Also Sword and Shield. Like Sword and Shield was like, okay, a lot of the things that what we were talking about with the overworld encounters and stuff like that, they said, okay, let's double down on that. Let's do more of it, right? And let's toy with the idea of doing an open world. And then that was at the time the first time since like gold and silver that a set of Pokemon games crossed 20 million units sold, right? Then they were like, okay, people are cool with us getting rid of overworld encounters. Let's not even have the tall grass caveat. Let's go full bore on open world, and let's not make it a thing where it's like you go to Pewter City and then you go to Cerulean and then you go,
my question for you then is like, why is that mutually exclusive from Legends, right? Because I think the Legends series gives them in the same way that you said that Champions is like a safety net.
Yeah,
I think it's the same thing, right? Where if you make a major deviation and it doesn't work, I think whatever, right? It's a Legends game.
So my problem with Legends
also sold really well, right? Like
it did.
Not 20 million, but
and that's also why I believe what I believe in terms of like them pivoting. I wouldn't have a problem with the Legends franchise if Game Freak was a better developer. That my issue is that they're not efficient enough to juggle multiple major franchises. That is the whole thing for me. Like if
that's a good argument.
In a world where they're Nintendo, and it's like, okay, well, we're EPD and we can have this group work on the Zelda games and we have this group work on the Mario games, and they even get more granular. They're like, and this group works on the Mario Kart and this group works on 2D Mario, right? That's because they're efficient and they're successful game developers. Game Freak, on the other hand, is not. So
that comes back to the sticking point we always come to in these conversations, right? Which is that like there is a problem with the development cycle of Pokemon games.
Yes.
They were on a too short, truncated development cycle for a long time. But like when you think about how long it takes the average, AAA game, right? Games that sell like Pokemon games sell to be developed, they get made in a third of the time.
Or if you're Rockstar, longer. And that's where my head's at. To me, Pokemon needs to be like the perfect world Pokemon video game. It's not literally this in every way, but like in terms of like the release schedule and the way that the fan base thinks of the releases. It needs to be GTA. It needs to be The Sims. It needs to be World of Warcraft. It needs to be Minecraft. It needs to be like, here's...
I don't think they're willing to do that until they have to, right? Because I think when you look at the fact that like, and I guess to clarify a position that we've been dancing around, I really like Arceus, right?
Yeah.
I did not really care for Scarlet Violet.
Right.
Like, those games were just so plagued in a way that I think is totally unacceptable. And to your point, I am tired of making excuses for Pokemon games, and I want to hold them to the same standard that we do hold your Zeldas and Marios and GTAs and all the other marquee franchises, right? Like,
yes,
Pokemon should achieve on that level.
Yeah.
But I think the idea that it's going to at this point, when they put out a game that barely functioned and it was the best selling game in the franchise since the second one, is I think telling of the fact that until there comes a point where the appetite for what Pokemon is right now diminishes, which I don't know that it's ever going to, right? Because there's a new generation of kids every few years, and there's so many of us that keep showing up for games that by any other franchise's standards we would be a lot harsher on, but we like Pokemon, or we like enough about Pokemon and what it is when it works, that we make excuses or we overlook the things about it that don't work, right? Or the things that like we wouldn't accept from a Zelda game.
Right. I agree with you, to be clear. And for me, and again, like this isn't something that I expect in any world would be a Gen 10 thing. Like that release schedule and that model for the game, that would be something that's like Gen 11 in my head, or Gen 12 even. To me, it's just like we need to take this step where it's the first step is like, okay, let's make a big enough game that makes enough changes that are like almost boiling the frog, and it's only really boiling the frog now because of the Legends games. But where they make a change to something like the battle system, because I don't know about how many people you interface with that are like Pokemon fans, but Pokemon fans in the sense that it's like, man, I really love the anime, and I remember when I was a kid, I played Pokemon Stadium 2 or whatever the game was when they were a kid and they were still engaged with the game, right? And when you bring up that Pokemon is still a thing and they're still releasing them, they look at it now and they're like, it still looks like this, like it still plays like this. Unlike,
I think that's a huge problem that Pokemon has, is that like there is a very divided audience, because like I think for me, like as somebody that I think the only reason that I still care about Pokemon as a video game franchise and not as something that I was into as a kid, right, is because of the fact that the competitive scene, like high level turn-based battling, I love turn-based RPGs, right? Like Expedition 33 was my favorite game of the year. I think maybe DK, we'll see. But I love that kind of game, and I don't think that it is an antiquated style of gameplay, but I do think that it is a niche style compared to open world action games.
That's my thing. It's like it's twofold for me, because I too am a big fan of competitive games specifically. And to me, I think that the turn-based games, like I want to try stuff like Expedition 33 and stuff, and I think that those games have their place, even though I'm not a huge fan of them. To me, I just don't think that Pokemon is the place for it. If like it's supposed to be this big blockbuster, like crowd pleaser, it makes the people that love the game, because you'll hear this a lot. And it's the case for me. I don't know for sure if it's the case for you. But like a lot of Pokemon fans became fans because of the other mediums that it's represented in. It's like they'll see the anime and they're like, oh, that's cool. I want to play the video game because the anime is cool. And then they play the video game and they're like, the video game is nothing like that, And it's almost to the point where you get to the other side and you get the video game fans, and they kind of make fun of the anime because it's nothing like the game. But most people want it to be. Like that's why something like Power World popped off, because it's like it's closer to that. It's closer to the anime experience of like I'm flying on my Charizard and I told my Charizard to help me light a fire so that that whole thing. Like
I think that to me feels like more a mismanagement on the side of the Pokemon company, right? Because I don't think that those things are mutually exclusive. I think to the point you made earlier about Nintendo, right? If the Pokemon company, I think, was like more forward thinking in terms of like gameplay and like wanting to make games that had a prestige quality from a design perspective, which I don't think is a priority, right? Because ultimately the media machine of Pokemon drives Pokemon, and that's part of, I guess, the point you're making, right? It's like for so many people, Pokemon is an anime or a card game or a manga series or something else,
or movies, or
yeah,
most of the mediums are in some way like a variation of the anime, like that. Even like the card game is like, when they market the card game, it's through like animated, very frenetic anime style battles. It's not like, all right, Cerule Edge, flamethrower, and then the other guy, rock throw. And it's like, nah, I'm swinging at you, I'm jumping back, I'm swinging back. It's like, it's very like almost, fighting game kind of, and that I want to make it clear, I don't think that Pokemon should be a fighting game, because every time I say that it shouldn't be turn-based, people immediately are like, it shouldn't be Pokken, because I don't want it to be Pokken. If I were to put a name on it, like like compare it to a game, I would say something more like a Ni no Kuni or a Kingdom Hearts or even a Xenoblade.
Yeah, action.
Yeah,
RPG, right?
I still think it's very much so an RPG. The world is an RPG. That is just what it is. I just think, and
so what I wanted to say just before we get too far away from it
Okay.
is like I totally agree with you, and I think that what in an ideal world, I think you would have a suite of multiple high quality AAA developers, each working on independent Pokemon projects
Yes.
that don't have to interact with one another.
Hmm.
Because I think for me, I am one of those people where like I think that what we think of as a quote unquote mainline Pokemon game, like the generational Pokemon games, I want them to stay in the turn-based system. Like I am an advocate for that because I think that like you look at games like Persona or Expedition 33 or some of the other modern turn-based RPGs that are snappier and more stylish and that are, have a really good narrative and like, all of the hallmarks of a great JRPG. And I think that that is a type of experience that I don't want to see Pokemon move away from, and I don't want to see the competitive scene fall away because I think that there's a lot of value in those things, not just like for me as an individual, but I think that like in the same way that to your point, there are a lot of different types of Pokemon
Right.
fans, and the hardcore activated goes watches worlds community. I think that those are people that, especially during the slower periods in the franchise's history, were a big part of driving it and keeping it engaged,
So
right? Like keeping the
that's another part of it for me. I also agree with you there. And I don't think that the game shifting to something that's different precludes them from still having a world's representative. And I would argue that it gives them a better chance at worlds expanding at a quicker rate. Like I made a video a couple months ago at this point, and in the video I was using statistics that different like games media sites were quoting about the size of like the biggest Pokemon tournaments ever, right? And they used the attendees. Wolfie, in the last week or so, he made a video about his world's experience, and he specified the amount of entrants in VGC. The number that he gave in that tournament is less than half what I thought it was. And even at that number, I thought it was too small for a game that sold 30 million copies. Because as somebody that is a fan of Smash, which is another fellow Nintendo game that has become an esport, and it doesn't have the backing that Pokemon does, it more than doubled the number that I thought, because the number that I thought was like 2,000. I thought because that's what they said. They said it was like 2,100 and some people that came to the tournament, and that was including the card game and Unite and all that stuff and blah blah blah, right? And then I was like, it's not enough people. I think that they could very well still make a competitive minded game that has gameplay that is more interesting to play and also watch, that could become a bigger esport. And I don't even think, because of the format of Worlds and all of their other like esports activations, it doesn't have to get rid of VGC in the way that we think about it. I think if anything, VGC, like if I had to bet now, I would bet if they made an action RPG that still was like, that still had competitive gaming in mind and still was like ultimately designed to be played competitively, VGC would, as we know it now, would be Melee. It would be like, it would still be something that the Wolfies of the world are like, yo, I love it. He would become Hungry Box. He would be like, yo, I love VGC and that's what I'm good at. And then the new thing that would be action based, and as a result, probably just based off of other esports that we know and how big they are in comparison, it will probably grow bigger. It will most likely be a more popular esport.
I think in my mind, what you're describing is just like different experiences, like, because I think that like making an action oriented game, like an action oriented esports game, right? Like that I don't think is the same game as a single player, like story driven experience. And I don't think that Pokemon should be limited to either, right? Like I think you look at a game like Unite, and I think that was like a really interesting attempt at leveraging the franchise in a different way in a like competitive online game. I think they were late to the MOBA party, obviously, but I think, you know, if we had gotten a Pokemon hero shooter a couple years ago, right? Like, or instead of like Marvel Rivals, it was a Pokemon hero shooter that took the mantle. Yeah, I think that you're probably right that the ceiling on that as an esport is probably higher.
So to be
But I also
clear,
think that those are like different things that appeal to different audiences.
yes,
And ultimately that's the point I'm driving to about my criticism of the Pokemon company is that the value of the Pokemon IP, despite the fact that Pokemon makes a ton of money, right?
yes.
I think it could
Most of
make a
it is
lot
outside of
more.
the games. Yeah, and I agree. That's what I'm saying. And I think so. I want to cut to the chase in this sense where I think in the immediate future for the game for the game to be as big as they want it to be, because very clearly they continue to want it to be a blockbuster franchise. I think
I mean, it is though,
yeah,
right?
it is.
Each individual one could sell more if they put out less. But when you think about how many they put out, they make as much as any other big franchise. It's just across like 3 or 4 games a generation.
So, and when I was looking at the sales again for this video, their sales, and like even in times where they took big breaks, like the same length in breaks that they're taking now when they do take one, their games declined until they came to a point where they're like, oh, okay, the last games since Ruby and Sapphire, obviously, that was a huge decline from Gold and Silver. But then Ruby and Sapphire came out, and then it was Diamond and Pearl, I think, spiked up a little bit from Ruby and Sapphire. And that was with the advent of like online, and like VGC was like, in essence, like it became a thing. Like VGC was like a thing, but it wasn't like a thing TM before Gen 4. And then from there, up
Gen 4
until
was when that really kind of got going.
Up until Sun and Moon, they kind of plateaued, and they were like steadily, like there's a steady decline. If you look at the graph, if you put it up like as a bar graph from game to game, it declined until we got the Sword and Shield, where that was the first time that they like increased. And then Scarlet and Violet was another increase on the last game that they did. And I contend that that is a result of them moving forward more, rather than being like, okay, how do we keep this the same but introduce some new things that people still keep it's still carrot on the stick kind of situation. And that's kind of one of the main reasons why I think that they should continue to move further and change things that they before thought were like non-negotiables. And to me, I think that even if they do eventually do that and they do make that change, I still think that, assuming that it works and it continues to sell more and more and more, that they should eventually be like, all right, new Super Mario Bros. Here's the Gen 11 or whatever. When we initially released it, it was an action RPG, and that was the style of the video game. Now you get a professionally produced fan game in the style that everybody wanted it to be, like that the core fans now are saying like it needs to be a turn-based game, it needs to be blah blah. Because I do think that still like Champions again, I think that that's also part of the safety net of like, okay, well, if people don't like this new thing and we do something different, we can still go back to Champions. VGC is still a thing there. I think VGC
I don't think that's a bad idea, honestly. Like I do think that you know, to the point that you were making earlier about how VGC is not as big as it could be, right? Or as a Pokemon esport could be theoretically. Yeah. I do think that part of the issue of like getting into competitive Pokemon is like it's always been obtuse, right? Like you have to buy a game, play a full campaign,
right,
and then get into this ridiculous rhythm of doing a bunch of in-game tasks to like have the right optimal layout, right? Whereas like we're streamlining all that in Champions to a degree that I think is going to really revolutionize it and allow a lot more people to dip their toe into it and see if it's something that they're interested in. In the same way that I think like, you know, TCG Pocket like had a real moment, right? And I think that having something be streamlined to that degree and like hopefully having some level of tutorialization is something that'll also help that a lot. And I think, yeah, if we get to a point where, where we're debuting a new generation of Pokemon is in a game that is more akin to the Legends series, where it is something that's like, and not even what it is right now, right? But like the
something
direction
different.
that
In the same way that I feel like ZA was like, well, we'll get back to that. We'll talk about our thoughts specifically on ZA towards the end, I guess. But I think that whatever it is, it just, and I'm not even completely against the idea of it being turn-based in some kind of way. Like Expedition 33, people bring that up a lot. I'm not opposed to that because I think that Expedition 33, at least as I understand it, I haven't been able to play it yet. I want to play it on Switch too if it eventually comes there. Just it's easier for me to justify. I think that something like that is less turn-based than people like give it credit for. Like the fact that you can like parry is like a lot of the reason why I don't think that turn-based is good for a competitive game. I think that the kinds of things that
I just don't agree with, because there are so many like competitive games that are turn-based. Like you play hands in card games, right?
Yeah.
Like I take a turn, you take a turn.
Right, but I'm talking about turn-based games in the way that they exist in video games, where there's RNG and there's like famous within the community. There's famous examples of somebody losing the game because the game told them that they lost, not because their opponent did better than them. It was like, oh, he got paralyzed 4 times in a row. GG's, right? Like it's that kind of thing. Whereas like most like if you extrapolate it far enough, it's like, oh well, there's RNG and real sports, because like what if the stadium is particularly loud and the ball got knocked out of the hoop because people were stomping, and like that kind of thing.
I mean, honestly, no, I would argue that, right? Because it could also be like, oh, like what if the best player on one of the two teams gets injured in the first quarter, right? And then it's like, okay, well, that a matchup that would have went one way went another way because of random chance. And it's like, I don't think that those things are a problem. And I think ultimately it's one of those things where like it's a game that you either vibe with or you don't, and I do. So I'm here to go to bat for the things about it that I think are a turnoff to you. And I totally understand why you would feel that like they're a turnoff. They're just not for me, right? Like
that's fair.
There's something about that, like, to me the game is like it's almost like deck building or like chess, right? Where it's like it's about minimizing risk.
I think that's the thing. So I don't disagree with you,
and I find that to be very intoxicating, right? Like we both did that that draft league that unfortunately ended up falling apart a couple years ago, and I was the last guy to draft. And I had such a good time of being like, damn, all the really OP Pokemon have already been taken.
Yeah, how do I?
Like, what like Wolf Glick ass anti-meta strategy can I come up with? And that was really fun for me. And I find that to be like a super rewarding element of the current, competitive scene of Pokemon.
To me, that all that aspect, like team building and like all the strategy of Pokemon, I don't think that goes away when it's not turn-based. I think that can still exist. I think team building is a core tenet of the IP. Like Ash builds his team, I
think in principle, that doesn't have to change. But I'm saying that to me, like what the game is now is the only reason that I still go and pay for what the games are, right? Like I do love, and with Champions, that's given me an out, right? Like if the next game is runs the way that Scarlet Violet does, like that's fine. Like then I probably won't bother, right? And then maybe I'm with you, because at that point it's like, what am I missing out on? But
so
I think that
I did want to bring this up because I meant to bring this up when you first mentioned the Scarlet and Violet, like how it ran and stuff like that. I'm doing a series right now where I'm replaying literally every Pokemon generation on stream because I want to do like retrospective reviews of like, did they actually age as well as people say that they did? And the trend I'm noticing is every time they try something new, it doesn't run well. Every time that they've tried it.
But I think that that game is such an
It's Gen 1.
unacceptable.
It's Gen 1. Where
Yeah,
a
but
type
Gen
literally
1,
doesn't work in the video game.
yeah.
A whole type does not work in the game. And there's more examples of like how that game is held together
Yeah,
with
no.
bubblegum and paper clips.
So much. But
And
I would argue though that the difference there is that there are like goofy things like that, not the game doesn't function, right? Which is like
that is the game not functioning. If a type that you
No,
put
it's
in
not.
if a type that you put in the game that's supposed to be pinned up as like a series of rock paper scissors interactions, and you have a type like psychic that is weak to one thing at the time, and that interaction doesn't work, that's game breaking. It's just people accept it because they're like, okay, well, I can get around the fact that Mewtwo is an unbeatable machine by the fact that they only put him at level 70 or whatever, and I can overlevel my Pokemon and get around the fact that the game doesn't function in the way that it's supposed to function. And
that's different though. That is a different thing. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying that there's a difference between, I think, glitches, right? That either, again, right, like for a lot of people, like those things are like
they're quirks now. They're things that they're like, right. This is cute.
It's charming, right? Yeah, like the fact that like that crits don't work the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah,
right. Like,
but I think I would argue that at the end of the day is subjective. Like what you think is charming and is subjective, because somebody can be like, oh, that shiny or whatever is clipped behind the wall. I've never actually seen this happen where a shiny got clipped behind a wall and you couldn't get to it. But in theory, if this actually happened, there's absolutely somebody that thinks that's funny and it's like, oh, LOL. You know?
Yeah, but yes, and I think you are doing whataboutism. Like I think you're
I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying I think that the argument that that the Pokemon games being glitchy or that a new Pokemon game being glitchy is not okay when one Pokemon game in the history it is okay and it's almost celebrated. That's more the thing that I take issue with. And I think that even outside of
Scarlet and Violet are so beyond the pale, though, man. Right? Because it's like
I think that's fair for you to. I think that's fair for you to believe.
Game on that level.
I think that's fair for you to believe. I completely. I think that that's fair. I'm just saying it's not a deal breaker for everybody, and I don't think that it's
clearly not
unfair. Yeah, and I don't think it's unfair for them to feel like that, because in the same way that like we have different deal breakers, so does everybody else. Like, to me, I would much rather play Scarlet and Violet than play a Gen 1 video game. As somebody that just recently did both, you know?
And it's so funny that you say that, because, and again, right?
You feel the other way. Yeah, exactly.
Bro, I literally have a brand new yellow file on my phone right now. I'm like literally playing through.
And that's the other question that I got. When you play the game, and this is not me trying to accuse you. I'm just asking.
No.
When you're playing on your phone, do you have any do you speed it up? Is there any like that kind of thing? Are you doing any like emulator specific things? Because I think that's a common through line for people that are like, man, insert generation is so good. And when you watch them play it, they're speeding through random encounters. They're like doing like item glitch. And again, this isn't me saying you're doing any of these specific things. No. But like,
and even if I am, right? Like, it's not like a gotcha thing.
It just is what it is. And to me, it's just like, and that's why when I'm playing through this series, I'm literally playing through it on as close to original hardware as I can. I literally bought a Nintendo 2DS capture card, and every video game that I can play as efficiently as I can, I'm playing it that way. I'm not speeding through nothing. I'm not doing no ROM hacks. It's just a game. And I think that
let me answer the question there, because I think so to answer the first part of it, what I'm playing right now is a ROM hack called Pokemon Yellow Legacy Edition. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah, I know.
With the Legacy ones.
I know this one. Yeah,
they're great. They're awesome. That team has done one for Gens 1, 2, and 3 so far. I don't know if they're planning to do more, but they're all great. And to me, what I like about it is not trying to modernize those games. It's trying to
kind of
It does though, but it's like
like you can't see your stats in the original game. I can't see my stats for the moves.
Well, no, you can see your stats, but you can't see.
No, for the moves, I'm saying for the moves, like how much power the move has. I didn't know what type of attack Gust was. You know, like there's so many things like that where it's like they didn't know what this game was. Like,
I don't even. I think with some of it, it's probably less even that they didn't know as much as it's that they were severely limited by the hardware. Right.
That's fair. Like, yeah, I can see that.
I think that the game can those carts, right, can only hold so much information. And famously, it wasn't until kind of like the 11th hour that they like really got it
like Mew and
together.
Yeah.
So it's like totally. I think to that point, right? So yes, I am playing one of those.
Yes.
For most of the time that I've gone back and replayed those games over the years, which I did a vanilla, like no, adjustments run, literally a year ago, right? Of blue version. So like, yeah, I can confidently say that I'm not looking at those games with rose-colored glasses because of how often I go back to them in the modern era. Whereas I can definitely make that argument about some of the other games in the franchise that I have gone back to and I bounced off of.
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at a ROM hack like that, I think that a lot of the things that I like about those kinds of things is it is giving you those quality of life changes that I think you would see if they
just stayed making that kind of game.
Well, but also I think that like if they were to do a like 2025 re-release of Gen 1 and they were like, oh, we're actually going to go in and make changes and make some updates and stuff like that. Like it's the kind of changes that they would make for that, right?
Yeah.
Like if you went
like
and bought
the new Super Mario Brothers. Like that's why I brought that up as an example where it's just basically a ROM hack. Like
and I think it's like even more akin to like when you see the ports that they've done for like older Final Fantasy
games. We were just talking about well, they didn't do that. Oh yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
I was talking about
it has autosave now. So
before you got here, I was talking about the Metal Gear Solid remake because it was something I was like considering, but I don't like the original game. I thought that they were going to like modernize it. I thought it was going to be like it's Phantom Pain, but like the story of 3 or whatever, right? This is
kind of like a Resident Evil 2 remake situation.
Exactly. I thought it was going to be something like that, but it did not end up being like that, so I skipped it. That's kind of like what I think the perfect scenario, in my opinion, is where it's like they accept the fact that just like based on statistics, not that many people in comparison like turn-based games. So they lead with the thing that's more popular, and then they say, okay, instead of doing remakes where it's basically the same game, but they change little small things, blah, blah, they actually make they become the demakes now. It's like, okay, well, Gen 10 or whatever has the ZA battle system, and maybe you didn't like that at the time. So 3 years later, you get Gen 10 and it looks like Gen 5 or whatever, right? Like, or not Gen, whatever generation is crystallized in people's mind is like, this was the peak. Because I get different answers from everybody. Where
I think it depends on your age a lot and stuff. Yeah. But I totally agree that like I would be so down for them to go back to pixel art for the turn-based stuff. Like I think if they did, like if we had, and I guess this is why I think it's so interesting, and I'm interested to talk about ZA in a minute with you. Like I'm so interested that you're like against the Legends concept like as its own franchise.
Literally just because they're bad developers. That's literally it. And also part of it is because I think that the prioritization in that way is inverted. I think that like if Legends was given the same level of like attention and marketing it would be the bigger franchise, but because the mainline games are the mainline games, the way that we talk about them even, and it's a little different in Japan, like technically in Japan, Arceus and ZA are marketed, or not like marketed in the sense of like budgets, but like marketed in the sense that like they have specific logos for like, this is a mainline game, it's a mainline game in Japan. Or the way that...
Wouldn't you argue? I guess I wouldn't say would you argue. Okay. I would argue that ZA has gotten a push in that way that Arceus didn't. I think Arceus felt like a side project. ZA feels like the next Pokemon.
Yeah, compared to Arceus for sure. Because like at the time of Arceus, we knew other Pokemon, like they were marketing 2 Pokemon games at the same time when Arceus came out. They were marketing Brilliant Diamond, Shadow Pearl. And then we got another one like a couple months after the same year that Arceus came out. So yeah.
I feel like Arceus would have sold more if they didn't do that.
Yeah, too. I agree. But we'll see. We'll see.
They really kneecap that game's overall performance by making, like, I don't know why they decided to be like, yeah, we'll put out 2 in the same year. Like, especially when it sold as well as it did, right? And the fact that Scarlet, Violet were like clearly needed more polish. It's like, why not just punt it until 2023? It's such a weird choice.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that. But that's kind of what it is. It's like, mostly it's because I think that Game Freak are bad developers, and I think that they need to set their priorities.
I feel like someone else should develop the Legends franchise. I think I think in a perfect world, you let Game Freak keep making what we're calling the mainline franchise. Maybe you even just give that a subhead, right? Like maybe we give Legends a name, and then we give like the gym battle turn-based, the classic formula, its own subgenre name, whatever. Not genre, sub name. Let Game Freak do that, right? Have another team that does remakes, and then bring in a team that is actually good at making action RPGs, right?
I would say just games, period. Because I don't think Game Freak is a good game developer at any game that they've ever made, ever. Like, I think Game Freak is like, they're just not efficient. Like, they've made games that we think are good, but I think that if most other developers make that same game, like if any other developer that's under the Nintendo umbrella makes Pokemon, insert Pokemon game, it's better. Yeah. There's no game developer that is associated with Nintendo that does a worse job.
I think I agree with that broadly. I don't think that that's true as a blanket statement. Like, I do think that there are games in the franchise I would point to and say this is a good game, not good for a Pokemon game, but I think it's a short list. And so I think you're right, but I put a lot of that blame on the Pokemon Company, because like they're just like, I mean, man, look at these, like, cut out the, all of the like games that are remakes and side games, whatever, right? Between Sun and Moon, right, and Sword and Shield is 3 years, right? Between Sword and Shield and Scarlet Violet, it's a little bit longer, right? But like, it's just that, man, they worked on Breath of the Wild. Like, we bring up Breath of the Wild, everyone brings up Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild was developed for like a decade.
Here's my thing, and we can't say for sure because we're not inside, but I don't think it makes sense where the entity that owns a third of the thing that people are blaming is like the one that's like holding their feet to the fire and being like, all right, Game Freak, you better make this game, and it better be at the... I think that they're doing that independent of what Pokemon Company is telling them, because they know that it's in their best interest, or they think, because I don't agree with them, they think that it's in their best interest to like stick to this like this conveyor belt approach that they've been on. And I think
maybe, I don't know though, you made the argument before about how a lot of the things that aren't the games make more money and like are bigger drivers of it. So that's the Pokemon Company that steers that, right?
Yeah. But I'm saying that I think that Game Freak has a hand in all of that. I think that they do what they do because they know that it works. And I think that
that's true.
So to me,
if they didn't think they could get away with it, they wouldn't.
They wouldn't do it. And I think, to me, like in my perfect world, if I was like president of Pokemon and Nintendo's like unilaterally, I would say, Game Freak, never make a video game again. You're the ideas guy. You come up with the Pokemon designs. You come up with the battle mechanics. You come up with the region. You come up with all of that intangible stuff. The reason why people play Pokemon across the brand. It doesn't matter if you're me or if you're you. We both have that in common, where we love the world. We love the character designs. That's what Game Freak excels at. That's what they do better than literally any other entertainment company in the world. They're terrible game developers. I think they say, yo, Bandai Namco, what up? You make the Smash Brothers games. You're making Kirby Air Riders. Take control of Pokemon. Be the developer.
I wanted to reply to a comment in chat here from RP1998, who said something like, when Genius helped develop Coliseum and XD, and it was a great game on their end. I think that's another, like, to your point there, I think that would be an interesting approach, to do like the way that like Sakurai's small team, right?
Yeah.
Worked with a bigger team that was equipped to make a game the size of Ultimate, right?
Yes.
Like, I think that would be a good way to go, because ultimately, like, you're right. Like Pokemon's, I think the core, like, the artistic direction, that stuff, right? Like, is strong. And again, I think the core gameplay system is good. But it's also like, there's just so many things, like the fact that they've been making 3D games now since 2013, and they still just, like, their environments are just so dead and lifeless and empty, and
it's because they had a
truncated
again. They're not good game developers. I want to lead with that. But it's because they had a truncated experience of game development that I can't think of another game developer that had the same trajectory. Like, they went from just starting to make 3D games in a 480i framework to being like, all right, you're on console now, and they're 1080p. So they couldn't even fully get their bearings at just base making 3D video games, and then they immediately got thrown into 3D game development. I mean, HD game development. If you look at early Xbox and PlayStation 3, and these are a lot of developers that we like, even like EPD and like PlayStation's bigger studios and stuff like that. Like, their transition, their first HD games are not good if we look at them now. But they don't feel that way because we got to see them improve alone, where they were the trailblazers in that way. And I feel like a lot of people think that, I don't necessarily think people literally think this, but the way that they carry themselves, it's like they expect Game Freak to absorb information through osmosis. It's like they always have been very trial and error kind of developer. And you're throwing them into a fire that other developers that are more competent than them even struggled with initially.
And again, I think it highlights the core issue that the games they need to take longer to develop.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, they've been on a roughly 2 to 3 year development cycle since the Game Boy. And it's like they've moved through how many console generations and just not changed the way they do things.
So based on what they say, their development cycle is closer to like 4 or 5, because they have two teams that cycle between each other, and they're always working on something with the A team and the B team, which is also part of my problem. So their games, in terms of like the development cycles, are comparable to what other studios take to make the games, even if they come at a faster clip. They're just not good at it.
4 years though is even still not enough.
It's not enough for an HD game. No, absolutely not. No.
Yeah. And like, I think generally for any game that sells as well as these games do, right? Like, they take any game that can comfortably come out and sell like 15 million copies, right?
I think it depends. Splatoon. They made that game in like 2 years. And Splatoon 2 is another. Like, there's examples.
I agree with you on that one. Yeah. I don't think Splatoon 3 should have existed. I think Splatoon 2 should have been the one game you got, and we should have gotten 3 on the Switch too and made it more of a sequel.
But they could, and it did well.
Yeah. And sure. But I guess to the point that you made earlier, right, about like Pokemon, I think it's just a matter of like, what is the right, like, is it better to release 2 games over the course of the generation and make that money or whatever, right? Rather than making one that is a games as a service that lives forever
I
and makes
absolutely
more,
think that
you know?
that is the thing. I think that that's what they do. I think what they do is they give us Pokemon and whatever they name it. I don't care what they name it, but let's say this is when they start. Let's say it's Pokemon Nintendo Switch 2, and it launches and it's very similar to what we usually have gotten in the Switch era, where it's like it's 400 Pokemon at launch, right? A year, 2, 3, however many years later, we get an expansion. It's 200-300 more Pokemon. It's a new region. It's a new story. It's new. It's essentially it's a brand new video game, but it's built off of the foundation of that base game that we already own, and it's $40-$50. They could even charge $60 if it's good enough.
What I think would be ideal, right, is like, to your point, they have 2 teams, right?
Right.
And you have, I think in a perfect world, you have the what's up, Mega Man? You have the A team, right? Be the one that's developing like the what will be the next generation, right?
Yeah.
In the background, while the B team makes updates to the one game you get a generation.
Yes.
Right? And then
because they essentially restart every time. It's not like they and it's not like they restart like most other third-party developers, where it's like, okay, next Unreal Engine video game, it's like, all right, let's start building the next video game engine. Let's go. You know, it's like they restart the entire development cycle every time they're like, all right, man, new generation. Whereas other studios, they're able to kind of cut corners because they reuse things. It's like Tears of the Kingdom, and Tears of the Kingdom even took as long as it took because freaking as big as that game is. But that game even built off of what Breath of the Wild became, or what it is, right?
In a big way. And it like meaningfully was able to stand on the shoulders of what that game was to do something new.
Exactly.
Right. And I think like I think you look at a game like, look at the pair of like Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, right? It's like a similar vibe.
Yeah.
Or like Spider-Man and Miles Morales.
Exactly.
Or like The Last of Us 4 and Lost Legacy. And like taking the engine and everything that you know, have hopefully perfected over the course of a reasonable development cycle, right? Like over the course of the rest of the console life cycle from whenever you release the last one. And like you take that time to really, you know, boil it down and get it right, and you just allow other developers. It doesn't even have to be Game Freak teams necessarily.
Please
they had
don't
Creatures.
I beg.
Yeah. And you know they had Creatures do the Diamond and Pearl remakes, which were obviously not ideal.
The Diamond and Pearl remakes was Ilka.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Creatures did
Let's Go,
right?
Creatures did Let's Go Pikachu. I mean, not Let's Go. What's it? Detective Pikachu.
Oh, that one.
Pokemon Let's Go was it was Game Freak and another studio helped them development, but I think it might have been Niantic. Was it Niantic? It wasn't Creatures. Well, Creatures has a hand in every Pokemon game technically because they do the modeling and the rigging and all that other kind of stuff.
But I think if you adopt that approach of, you know, let the main team cook for a reasonable amount of time on developing the next engine, the next set of Pokemon, all those things. And maybe you do to a point you made earlier, right? Like have a more limited dex, have some things like that so that there's some place to go. But also I think like you could just have it be a little bit more restrictive and have something that is like, so rather than getting Gen 10 and Gen 11, right? We get a Gen 10 and then a second Gen 10 game that's not a sequel, not in the same region, right? Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Go do something.
I'm saying we get one generation per console generation. We get Gen 10 on the Switch 2, and that is it. And then they say, yo, y'all like remakes? Here's Johto. You just get all of Johto, all the Pokemon in that video, get in this new engine in the game that you own. Give us 40, 50, even $60.
it's crazy because what you're pitching is Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which is actually the best Pokemon game.
I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that.
Not taking the bait. Okay.
I'm not taking that bait. So let's talk about ZA actually. So I wanna continue on the thing that I was setting up as far as like how I felt about the game, right? So when they first announced the video game, I was like, oh, this is annoying. I don't like this because blah blah blah. Because I'm thinking that it's going to be a Legends game, and in my head, a Legends game is just Arceus, but like it's different region. It's like, okay, we're gonna go to we know we're in Kalos, and it's gonna be in the year 1232. Right,
dude, I was so ready for that.
I did not want that at all, because and this didn't necessarily have to be reality, but in the moment I'm coming fresh off. Well, I'm not fresh off of Arceus at the time when they revealed this, obviously, because they revealed it like what 2 years later or something like that. But I'm like, when I'm playing through the game, I'm like, man, a lot of the reasons why this game is less than what I want it to be is like they're at least using it as using the time period as justification for it. It's like, of course there's no trainer battles. Everybody's scared of Pokemon but you.
Right.
So and there's various things like that where to me, and I would argue most people that are longtime Pokemon fans, like the Pokedex is an ancillary thing. And I love how they did the Pokedex in Arceus.
I will say, that is to me the thing that makes Arceus so cool. Is it was the first time in so long that I actually felt motivated to complete the Pokedex.
Yeah,
and I did. Like I went out of my way to do the damn thing, and it was fun.
So to me, right, I loved how they did the Pokedex in Arceus. I hated that it was the only thing to do. I think that you still can have the Arceus Pokedex and still have all the other stuff that there is to do in every other Pokemon game. You could still have the playing the game with your friends and you know, the long term like games that people can naturally, like literally in Scarlet and Violet. I have like 700 more than that. I have like 800 plus hours in Scarlet and Violet because of the amount of natural content that I can just play in the video game. I don't have to squeeze any juice out of it. That is, I'm not replaying it. Well, I replay it, but that's because I stream. But in my base save, I have like 800 hours in the video game because of all the content that's in the game. Arceus, you cannot naturally do that. And I know some people think that that's charming and all the other kinds of, I think that is in this world where like the it's like this sub series that's like, oh yeah, people that want something new, here's this pared down game that's like half of the content playable, less than half. Let's be real, it's like a third, if that. I want to say 100 hours, maybe. I think it's even less than that in Arceus. And I did a decent amount of shiny hunting. I did the whole like like the post release content of like you gotta do the like boss rush kind of thing or whatever. I did all that stuff, and it was like when I wasn't even having fun with the game anymore, which is another thing of it where it's like it got to the point in Arceus where I was like seeing through the seams. I'm like, man, everything about this for the first 20 hours is so sick because it's new and it's interesting, but 25 hours in, I'm like, okay, this is less interesting because I know that these beats are very well defined and obvious, and the thing that is supposed to drive me forward and be like, ooh, look at that, is no longer ooh. It's like, oh, that thing that I saw before 20 hours ago.
Yeah, I don't know. I that just wasn't my experience with it. Like I very much felt like it was the most meaningful refreshing of the Pokemon formula that has ever happened. So
that I agree. I agree with that. Yes, I agree with that.
It was like such a breath of fresh air to have that gameplay loop be different. And like I got very, very into the rhythm of like just the loop of going for a run. Right. And being like, all right, like I'm going to head out. I'm going to capture as many Pokemon as I can in this region towards this dex goal that I have, or trying to complete this side quest or whatever. And I'm going to go until I run out of resources, and I'll go back and level everything up and again and again. And I think that I got out of it what a lot of people get out of Monster Hunter, which is a series that has never connected with me. And I think it feels like work in the way that it feels like you feel like this felt like work. But for me, there was something about this. And it's funny because
I don't think it feels like work, to be clear. I think what it's missing from Monster Hunter is like Monster Hunter has a payoff. Monster Hunter is like, okay, and you're and like while you're doing it with your friends most of the time. Most people that play Monster Hunter are playing it with groups of 4 people. So it feels more worth doing while you're like in the moment, because it's like, it's fun that I'm doing it, and it's not just because it's this new thing, it's also because things are happening with my friends, and LOL, it's funny. Like I had these moments, I had like bootleg versions of this moment where like I played the game with Trev in the chat, where we kind of played it like what Nintendo's using game chat style of like everybody's in the Discord, we're streaming our screens, it's like LOL, Trev he lost his satchel again because he keeps dying. That's funny. You know, it would be so much better if I was like Scarlet and Violet style, because again, we played this game the same way. I'm in the world. Like, let me tell you how I played Scarlet, and I don't want to spend too much time on this part specifically. But Scarlet and Violet, how I played that entire game, including every DLC drop, in a Union Circle, full, 4 people. It was the bulk of that group was me. It was my friend Youth, who has never played a Pokemon game in her life, but I peer pressured her into playing it. And Trev, and then our other friend Alec, who's a big Pokemon fan, but it's another like success story in the sense that before, in his head, Pokemon is this very insular single player RPG, and I've been telling him like, no, this is a multiplayer game, and it always has been. And he's like, nah. So I'm like, yo, play it like this, right? And that's how we played the game, and how that materialized with like the best way to describe it is with my friend Youth, where she'll see one of us have a Pokemon just following us around. Yo, how'd you get that? Oh, I just went to area whatever. And she's like, where is that? Oh, I can like literally show you. I'm going to get on my Koraidon. I'm going to fly over here. I'm like, yo, I found it here. And then I can watch her make attempts to do the thing and all that stuff. That's lost in something like Arceus. And that, in fairness, I get why some people might feel like that's like something that they're missing, because it's not something that they played the game with. Like, that's not how they think about ever thought about the game, so they're not losing it, you know? Yeah. But for me, I've like, Pokemon has always been a social experience for me since childhood. It's always been, I wasn't the type of kid that like I completed my Pokedex because I had 2 copies of the game. It was because I had friends, and my friend said, oh, I got the extra one of that. Do you have an extra one of that? Oh yeah. Blah. And that's how I played.
I totally feel that. And I think it's just the way that I found the fun of that game, right? Was like for the whole cycle of us playing it, right? Like every week on the podcast, right? Like me and Chewy was on the show at the time, and Sierra, we're all so in love with it. And it was like, we were doing like the old school, like, oh, like, have you got this Pokemon yet? Have you done this? Have you done that? And it was like, I think more akin to the way that like Breath of the Wild was a social game, where it's not a game that we're playing at the same time, but it's the social experience of everyone's playing it at the same time, right? And everybody's talking about it and talking about like, oh, have you gotten to this map yet? If you go to this corner, this Pokemon's over there. Have you done this thing? Have you done that thing? And yeah, I think to your point, like, I think that they're both like good, satisfying experiences in their own way. I think where I definitely agree with you, even as somebody who like would rank Arceus higher on the list of Pokemon games, there is no good end game like
there's no reason, there's no real reason to continue to play it. Yeah, once you complete the Pokedex, or if you want to be really sweaty, you get a shiny dex, you know, like there's a finite number of things to do in the game and it ends. Whereas like a game that's multiplayer, like objectively is not finite. It's like you like, and I'm speaking generally when I say you, like you can be like, all right, I have my fill of doing Pokemon battles or whatever, but it objectively is not finite. It's something that you can do for forever. If you had fun playing the game with your friends, you can have fun doing that for the rest of your life. And I think just cuts that off. There's a lot of stuff that like, everything that I enjoyed about Arceus outside of the gameplay, which I agree with you, it's the best minute-to-minute experience that I've ever had playing a Pokemon game so far. That is something that I want to crystallize. That is the only reason why I don't hate Arceus. It's because the minute-to-minute gameplay is phenomenal. But
I think it's so interesting though that like, and I guess it's just like it's the ways that different players value different things in games, because like fundamentally, I'm just like a different kind of player than you are. Like where like I don't really need a game to provide 800 hours.
I don't need a game to provide 800 hours either. But for me, if I'm used to like a franchise providing me 800 hours, and then the game that's supposed to be like the like game that's for me, like marketed, like you like action games, here's a lesser version of that. That's where I take issue. It's like I didn't play Donkey Kong Bonanza for 800 hours, but I think Donkey Kong Bonanza is good for what it is.
It's so good.
It's my game of the year right now. I think that there are games that like because people try to, and I'm not saying that you're doing this, I'm just responding to comments, not like people that comment this thing on my YouTube channel for
the royal people.
Yes,
people say this,
right. And I can show comments but like when I say something like that, when I'm like, oh, I'm used to spending X amount of hours in a Pokemon game, it's almost like a content creator that you're following used to do a specific thing, and then they realize, oh wait, I could put this behind a paywall, and that's what they're doing now. It's like you used to give me a new podcast every week, but now the podcast that you give me every week costs $5. It's like I can't even give them the $5 in this case for Arceus to have what I want, but it's taking segments of the game out of the game and being like,
I mean, I think the thing is like I think it's fundamentally a different game, and it does take things out, but what it does instead is provide something new. And I think it's and again, I'm not like trying to like present this like a gotcha moment, but I think it's so interesting to me that you're like, oh, it's the best moment to moment gameplay experience I've ever had in a Pokemon game, and I almost hate it. Are two things that I just fundamentally like.
This is why, again, and maybe I'm not doing a good enough job at explaining it, right? Because it's not that I don't like everything else about Pokemon games. The only thing I don't like about Pokemon as they exist is the very specifically the battles. I love everything else. I love being able to, and I mean like the battles and like how they're materialize. I like the like being able to compete against my friends and doing multi and single and double and so on and so forth. All of that stuff. I love that. My thing is I wish that I could do all of those things and actually have fun with the minute-to-minute gameplay while I'm doing it. This feels like a monkey's paw solution with Arceus, where it's like, here's the minute-to-minute gameplay that you want, but it's a fifth of the game. That's why I don't like it. It's because it's like, shut up. We'll give you the thing that you want, but we'll take everything else. You know, that's my problem.
I get that. I totally get that. And I think that because you have been so specifically like, I want a Pokemon game that has more action minute to minute, and that this is that, but it's not quite what you want. I understand.
And like, it's not everything that I currently like about it. Because again, Pokemon has always been a social game for me. Always. So it said, oh, okay, you like the game and you like the game, or you dislike the gameplay of this game, but you still love this franchise because the social part of it is so valuable to you. We'll give you the other thing that you say that you want, and we'll take away the thing that kept you on the hook for as long as it did. Sure. That's my problem. It's not actually a solution. It's being like, you can't have two things. It's like they're doing the cheap, fast, good thing, but it's only either I can only pick one thing. I can't pick cheap and fast. It's just cheap, it's just good, it's just fast, and that's it. I at least went the cheap and the fast, or the good and the cheap, but they're just letting me pick one, and that's. I think
I get that.
And
ZA, we don't have to harp on it too much longer.
I'll say, so far, I'm a lot higher on because, at least as far as we know, it is able to be a social experience because it does have multiplayer now. And and on top of that, not only is it like an action RPG in the sense that it's like, oh, you're the trainer and you could dodge attacks and all that stuff, but the battle system is also an action-based thing, right? So it also does that where like even the battle system, it's like, okay, like I'll accept this, like it's different. I think even now, I think ultimately I would prefer they do some kind of turn-based like thing that lets me actually like have some level of fidelity with the experience of like Ash being like, Pikachu, jump up on that rock and thunderbolt Rhydon's horn specifically. If that is somehow translated in a turn-based game, I'm cool with that too. But This game specifically is like, it's an action game. I get that multiplayer experience. I don't know how deep the multiplayer experience is going to be, TB on that. I don't know if the battle system is going to land in the way that I didn't know when Arceus was revealed if it was going to land. Ultimately, it did not. That's
the thing. I have such huge reservations about the changes to the battle system. Obviously, right? Like, as anyone who's been listening has observed, obviously I like the turn-based situation.
Yeah.
And I just don't know that like dodging is gonna feel like it's like a meaningful addition. I'm happy to be wrong, because I think to the point you made way earlier about Expedition 33, I think the fact that that game has the like dodge system and the parry system and all that stuff, like that stuff can be really cool in turn-based combat, and maybe this will be more akin to that.
I think so far, the part of it, because like as we see it right now, I'm also like, I don't know if this is going to mean anything, but I'm also I am assuming, just based off of what I know about the way games are covered and demoed and stuff like that, people are bad at the game. So like we haven't seen a moment where somebody has like very intentionally been like, I'm dodging this move and I'm countering, right? If that moment is able to happen and be very intentional, I think that is all I need. But as we see it so far, it does feel like, maybe not. Maybe they don't do what they need to do.
My fear is it's going to make the game way too easy, because I think like because not to like sound like an asshole, I'm really good at dodging in games, right?
I'm so good at no, I feel you, because that's how I am with parrying. I don't like that.
I was gonna say I'm hot garbage at parrying.
Anybody so good at parrying.
Watch me stream Dark Souls, or not Dark Souls, Elden Ring, can attest. It's like I don't parry, I dodge, and I'm a good dodger. And it was the same thing in Expedition. I took all of the perks that made anytime you got a perfect dodge, you got a benefit, and I didn't do anything with parrying because I'm just not good at it. Yeah. So fine. But like, if I can just dodge every attack, then it's like, well, then who even cares if the Pokemon has an attack that's super effective, or if they like have a status ability or something like that? Because it's like, I can just dodge it, right?
But
am I ever going to take damage in this game? Probably not.
So if they do it well, is the thing that's why it's the big question mark. Will they do it well? The way that they do that is they introduce some level of risk to what you dodge and when. It's like, okay, like, think of it like boxing. If I throw out a thunder shock and that's my jab, and you dodge that, and now you're in the middle of like trying to dodge this thing or whatever, and then I'm like, oh, okay, you dodged that, but now I'm hitting you with thunder, and you're done. GG's. You know, if there's risk reward to like what you dodge and why, that's the thing. Satisfying. Because to me, my ideal world, and that's what like. I haven't played it, so I can't say for sure. But in my ideal world, Pokemon games are something that like you can be somebody like me who I'm just going to like go for the skill gap. I'm just going to try to outplay you. Or you can just be smarter. You could just have like you trained your Pokemon with a better stat spread that's going to resist the fact that your opponent's going to hit you more, but they're going to take dumb risks that you're going to outsmart them when they take them and kill them for it. You know, it's like I can be something that's like where my skill tree, my metaphorical skill tree is in execution, but my strategy is not that great. Or vice versa, and either one of those people, if they're equally as good at the thing, could win. I could be that much better at you at execution that I can win. Or you can be that much better than me at strategy that you can win. Pokemon doesn't have that. Pokemon's like there's like a ceiling, and they're like obviously there's like exposure. That's like the skill gap in Pokemon. It's like somebody like Wolfie is going to be better at the game than a lot of people because it's his job. So, and he has a team of people that are giving him their exposure through osmosis. It's like, oh, we tested this team and this is what happened. This is this interaction, and this Pokemon's good at this because we've seen this happen in these test battles. Pokemon's not like something like a Smash Brothers where like me winning a game really does, or it can. Smash Brothers is closer to that dynamic of like strategy and also execution. But like in Smash Brothers, 9 times out of 10, I can like, if I never saw a character before, and or a lot because there's 90 characters in the video game, my approach to fighting them is not that different in the beginning to a character that I do know how to fight. And I'm able to still perform well, even if they have more knowledge than me in the individual matchup, because my knowledge of the game overall and my execution a lot of times is better. So you can make up for.
I think that's I think that I disagree with the way that you're characterizing how high level competitive play works, because I think the person that you're using as an example is honestly like one of the
even
the
not Wolfie.
children.
Like, look at anybody that does like competitive Pokemon for like any level of like income. Like they do it and they're a content creator or whatever. Like these people usually have like they whether they're paying them or not, they have a group of friends that are also doing the same thing and they share notes, and that's why a lot of times there's like a huge like consolidation of teams, because a lot of the player base gets the teams from this like not necessarily the same exact and not necessarily literal, but this hive mind of like, well, we know this works and we know this is the meta, so this is what you need to do to avoid the meta. Whereas like something like Smash, there's a meta, and like Steve is like the best character or whatever, but Little Mac, or the Ganondorf, I guess technically, whoever the worst character is, if I'm better than you at the game and I'm so much better of a Ganondorf than you are a Steve, I can win. If your Incineroar and my Incineroar are the same, like we have the same stat spread, or like we have the same team or whatever, at that point it's literally just the exposure. It's like, okay, well, I know the weaknesses of your team.
I don't agree. I think that's wrong, because I think if you look at a lot of the most famous players who have done things that are like echo, right? Like again, like you've brought up Wolf Glick a couple times, right? Wolf Glick's most famous Worlds win
is the Parrish thing.
Was him.
Yeah, Parrish.
Well, yeah. Yeah, and like using things, but like he uses a lot of things that are not in the meta, right? Like he had the win where he was using, not kind of,
yeah,
he had
the one
where he was using a bulky support Raichu. No one else placed use that strategy.
So here's how that materializes in Pokemon, right? When people talk about like off meta strategies in Pokemon, it's not their team is off meta. It's they have additions to their team that's off meta, and then they have hyper meta things to offset that. It's not like I have a team and it's Pikachu,
right?
and it's just name any like, and it's a team full of like off meta Pokemon. It's like, you have a Pachirisu, but look at the rest of my team. The rest of my team is I have Salamence and I have Rotom Wash and I have hyper meta Pokemon. Whereas
also, like, again, right, there's so much like variance among what a set on a hyper meta Pokemon looks like, right? Like you brought up how like Gen 4 was when like competitive play really crystallized, right? Yeah. And I remember the days where Salamence was an insanely dominant Pokemon, and part of that was the fact that it could be used in a lot of different ways, right? Like it could be a mixed attacker, it could be an all-out physical attacker, it could be an all-out special attacker.
Right.
And part of the strategy of the game is sussing out what your opponent's strategy is and responding to it. And I think, to me, it's very similar. I think the game that Pokemon is the most analogous to in terms of like
if you say chess, I'm gonna blow my brains out.
It's true. It's the same thing. It's about everybody has pieces, but it's about how you use those pieces. And there are like so many. You could go read books about chess strategies, and if you go play against another player who sucks, right? Like you're gonna beat their ass.
I think that's competitive games, period, is the thing. I think a lot of people say that, give that chess analogy, and that's just in everything. Like any competitive game, like worth its salt at all, has that dynamic of chess.
No, I don't think that's true, because what you're talking about when you were bringing up action games, right? Like y'all are laughing, but I'm right. Like when you're bringing up action games, there is a physical skill difference.
Yeah.
Right. And like that is inherently a different kind of competition, right? Like no matter how much I might like like, I don't know, right? Like I watch basketball,
Right.
right? I could never play basketball.
Mhm.
I'm fat, I'm short, and I'm slow. And there's no amount of me learning strategy or really taking in the game that's going to make me a better player, right? The thing about like a turn-based game like this that isn't about reaction time or something like that is, yeah, like the way that you win is by outthinking and is by knowing the game.
So this
and
is what I
knowing
want to
how
say to that.
the things can
I
go.
disagree. As somebody that, again, to use Smash as an example, there's characters like Rob where and again, Steve is another good example where execution is not important at all. It's literally just strategy. It's literally just, I know when to use this up tilt. And if I use this up tilt, it's GG's. You're not going to win. Like there are matchups like that.
Like, sure, there are matchups like that, but I guess like,
so just pick the right character in the same way that in Pokemon in this theoretical world.
It's not though, because if you just pick the right character, then you would just win. But that's not what happens, right? Like,
yeah, because
if everybody's
there
using
is,
the same.
Right. Because there is that dynamic of both things. There are people
I feel
that
like
have
the point that you're making is being more made by the fact that you're arguing that everyone uses the same pieces, because then it clearly comes down to
because not everybody. No, because yes, exactly. But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that in Pokemon, right, the thing that separates Wolfglick from everybody else is that he has such a high level of knowledge and patience for the Perish Trap thing that most players do not. And
that's a skill. That's a skill issue. That's why those motherfuckers are not world champions.
Look, I'm not done making my point yet. So right with the thing between Wolf, not everybody can be Wolf. We both agree on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not everybody can be Aquila. Not everybody can be Doramigi. Not everybody can be MK Leo. But everybody, not everybody, literally, but most people can be a Zamba. Most people can be the like this person when they go to their local or they go to like a regional, they're liable to top 16, they're liable to top 8 because they understand the game more, and that's what it is. It's not an execution thing. The execution thing is the barrier between being the Wolf in specifically something like a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. But there always is going to be the deciding factor.
No, because again, you're trying to argue that execution doesn't matter, and it does.
I'm not trying to argue that execution doesn't matter. I'm saying that execution is the same thing as like that gap that exists with Wolf. I'm saying that you can still be good at the game. You can still be a successful player at the game without having the best execution. That is objectively true. As somebody that, again, I follow both. I follow VGC. I watch it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about at high level of play, yes. I think that's, but I don't think that's true then.
But it is true.
It does come down to execution. I mean, with the caveat of the thing that you already brought up, which is RNG, where sometimes like you can just be unlucky and you can lose, right?
So
but like that's also true.
What I'm saying for Smash, look at Smash. Smash 4 is the most perfect. There's Smash 4. It happens in every Smash game, really. But Smash 4 is an easy example because Bayonetta released. Bayonetta comes out. Players that were terrible at the game start to consistently top 8 majors. They're not consistently winning more than the people that are better than them at the game, but they became relevant because they found the character that clicks with their low execution.
But they were still good enough to do that, right? Because there are still people, like, no matter how good the character is, if you play...
But that's true for Pokemon, too.
Like you, dude, like, you're fundamentally a better Smash player than I am, right?
Right.
I could pick the most broken character in the game, and you can pick the most meta, whoever's worse, and you'll still probably beat me, right? Just because you know the game better than I do, and you play more, and also...
So would you argue that that's not true for Pokemon? If I gave you the same team as I gave somebody that isn't as familiar with you as VGC, you're saying that they wouldn't be able to beat you? I mean, that you wouldn't easily beat them?
No, I would. That's my point, though.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying.
if I'm using a bad team against a good, like, if I use a bad team against a player with a good team and they suck at the game, I could beat them.
Yes, and that's also true for Smash.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying.
Okay. I'm not disagreeing with you about the Smash thing. I'm saying that
I'm saying because maybe I misunderstand your argument, but what I understand your argument to be is that execution would make it would be a barrier for people that are not good at the game to enjoy and be able to be relatively successful at the game.
So,
and
let me restate my argument, I guess, because you were bringing up the point about how in this pitch that you had for how an action adventure Pokemon, like how the ZA system could work on a competitive level, right? Mm-hmm. Is you saying like what I think would be a perfect experience is if a valid way to play the game is to physically be able to outplay the other player by being better at them just by like interacting with the mechanics, right? But that also it would ideally be able to be a situation where understanding the game on a fundamental level, right? And like being able to strategize better would lead to you winning against somebody who physically was a better player than you.
Yes.
And I think I completely agree with you when you're talking about that in the context of fighting games, because I think that that is a gap, right? Where like there might be somebody who is, say, like a player who was like a really sick pro 15 years ago, right? And now they're older and they're slower and the reaction time isn't as good as they were when they were in their prime, and maybe they're not playing as much anymore. So like, you know, rust's on or whatever. But like that motherfucker can still ball, right? Like they can still show up and play well against somebody who is maybe younger, faster, more reactive, but like they don't know the game as well. They don't understand like how to like bait somebody off the level and spike them or things like that, right? And I think that that is totally valid in a game where there is like moment to moment gameplay interaction.
Right.
I think like the difference, right? And I guess the point I'm trying to drill down to about like with Pokemon is like that it is more akin to a game like chess or poker or something like that, where like what you're doing is like it's more a math game than it is.
Yeah, it is a math game.
Like, you know, like a skill, like a physical skill game, right? And I think, you know,
so
that
more so what I'm saying is I think when people say Pokemon's like chess, to me it reads like, well, there's strategy in this one, there's not strategy in that. And to me,
I'm not saying that at all.
Listen, I'm just saying generally. I'm not saying that that's necessarily what you're specifically saying. I'm just saying that this is how the argument is usually presented, not by you again. But so for me, it's like, as somebody that plays games like this, it's an additional thing. It's not like this game's strategic and that game is not. It's this game is strategic, that game is strategic, but this game also has this layer to it as well. And that's what I'm missing in like Pokemon as it exists now. And I don't think that, again, I think VGC should still exist. I think that that's cool and everything, but I think that it would just be cool. And I think that a lot of people would also feel the same if there was that additional layer to the game for people that want more out of the game than just that math aspect of it. Because I think that there's like, I enjoy that. That's cool. But I don't think that to me, at least, is the end all be all. I think that we can have that, and also like not also, but have that in a game that execution is a factor is more so what I'm saying.
Yeah. I definitely see that. And I think that the comparison you made with Expedition 33 is an interesting one. Like I think changes like that to the system, making like a more active time battle system like that is something that I could definitely see. Or I guess even like you said, like having maybe like a VATS like system where you are like trying to like attack different parts of
literally anything that's not just you use flamethrower, I protect, maybe like that's not just that. I'm cool with that existing. That's fine. I think that like the way that Pokemon Worlds is structured proves that we can have our cake and eat it too. I think the only thing that is like that it comes off to people when I say things like this, like in videos, right, in my comment section, when people like react negatively, it's as if I'm telling them that the thing that they like will no longer exist. But really the only real risk to VGC is that it's not going to be the most popular thing at Worlds. I think that's the only real risk. I think that
Which
it will
it doesn't
still
even
exist.
matter.
Yeah,
Because if there
and I
was
agree.
another game,
Yeah.
if there, yeah, and I'm to your point. I think if there was another game that blew up and made Pokemon Worlds a more overall watched thing, that's only rising
That
tide
is
lifts all ships.
only a good thing. And that is what I argue all the time. For me, when I say I want the Pokemon games to change, it's because I think that we've had 30 years of this thing. We could have 30 years of another thing. And also that thing that we've had for the last 30 years still exists. It still exists. Like,
I think all you need to do is look to the other really like successful marquee Nintendo franchises, right? Like Mario has 2 types of games.
that's what I said the new Super Mario Bros. I said the new Super Mario Bros. Thing like towards the beginning, where I was like, yeah, if they can make Pokemon a more action based game or whatever it is, update it, and don't make it essentially the same game that we've been playing since 1998 in America. And
absolutely.
I think that is a net positive for everybody, because if there is a real fervor for that thing, like, we don't know, we can't say for sure how big our individual, like the people that represent how we feel specifically down to a number, we can't say for sure how big that actually is. But what we can say is like, okay, well, this thing did exist, this thing didn't exist, let's try it, let's see if the thing that's new, how it does. And if it succeeds, you can keep doing that. If it doesn't, you stop doing that and you try something else, or you go back to the drawing board or whatever. But what wouldn't happen is they make a new thing and that somehow erases the thing that we have right now. And that's my main argument. It's like, people resist the idea of an action-based Pokemon game as if that denies them of something, but in reality, the only thing that's denying anybody of anything is this universe where, like, the Pokemon fan base that thinks that Pokemon should be this very specific thing is the one that wins, because they're the only ones that's saying that something shouldn't exist. Because I'm not saying turn-based Pokemon shouldn't exist. It already does exist. I can't do nothing about that. I'm just saying I think that it should be more than just that.
The IP, I think it should be a lot more things.
Yeah.
You know, I think the reason that Pokemon is so monolithically successful is because of what a versatile idea it is.
Right.
And it's kind of like wild, actually, how few like games or pieces of media there are that don't engage in the same handful of tropes.
Yeah.
You know, which is ultimately, right, why I was making such a passionate argument that was pro Arceus, which is like, it was different and I liked that it was different.
Yeah.
And I think it's wild that to take it back to the thing I was saying earlier about, like, if the whoever you want to lay it at the feet at right, whether it's Pokemon Company, whether it's Game Freak, like,
yeah.
I think Pokemon as a ship, as an organization, they need more high quality developers in their roster, and they need to, like, in the same way that they did with Pokken. Like, I think Pokken was a really great experiment that just was unfortunately timed.
Yeah.
I think if that game had come out for the first time in the heyday of Nintendo Switch, maybe it would have done a little bit better, right? But either way,
also it was the first entry in a fighting game. Like, it's kind of like how people talk about ARMS. Like, people see ARMS sold like 3 million copies and they're like, that game failed. And it's like, look at how fighting games sell, like, as a genre.
Yeah.
In the same way that people, I was talking to Trev about this earlier, in the same way that people talk about Expedition 33 like it's this like massive success, but it's a game that sold, as far as we know, last public figure that I was able to find was 3.3 million units. If the next Pokemon game sold 3.3 million units, they would everybody would be panicking.
That's a false equivalence, though, right? Because because Expedition 33 it's so different, right? Because I think
I know
it's a $50.
So to be clear, I'm not comparing Expedition 33 to Pokemon. I'm comparing Expedition 33 to ARMS. I'm saying that Expedition 33 is a successful example within a niche thing. ARMS is also that, but people compare ARMS instead of comparing it to another like super like specific fighting game thing. They look at it and they say it should be Smash Brothers, when Smash Brothers is not ARMS. You know, that's what I'm saying. I'm not comparing Expedition 33 to Pokemon. The only time that I bring up that comparison is when people try to say like, well, Pokemon can grow, and if it did what Expedition 33 did, because we don't have have proof of that. Because again, it's this smaller game made by this smaller studio, and it did fine for what it is, but we don't have a 20 million seller that did that. You know what I'm saying?
No, I do think though what I'm gonna look up the sales of a game before I make this comparison. But I think yeah, okay. So Persona 5 Royal, right, sold 7.25 million units allegedly.
Right.
That's a number I'm getting from Reddit, so we're gonna take that with a grain
when
of
was
salt.
this article? I mean, when was the post? Because I'm just curious if it was like post PC and Xbox,
Yeah, honestly,
and Switch, and you know.
This is saying as of, that's probably that, right?
Because that would be the other factor where it's like,
okay. Worldwide sales of the Persona 5 series surpassed 10 million units 2 years ago.
so that's the series.
Yeah. So, and that's just Persona 5.
Oh, okay,
So
okay,
that
okay.
means
Oh, so that's Persona 5 and then like,
Royal,
yeah, okay,
and then the
okay,
spin-off.
yeah.
So I think that's a better point of comparison, but I still think is
I think
still
even
not
that,
one
if it's 10 million, Game Freak is like, they're having an existential crisis if the next Game peaks
for
like
sure.
that.
but where I would push back on like comparing them one to one is I think one of the points that you made
Pokemon's a bigger
earlier,
brand.
a way bigger brand.
Yeah.
And one of the points that you made earlier is I think that a common experience, right, is somebody who gets into the anime, right, and then comes to the games and then is disappointed that they're different. I mean, I think one of the ways that you make it more like the anime is
you make the art style like that, or
you tell good interesting stories. So comparing it to Persona 5, I think if the next Pokemon game was a game that was like in more stylish in the way that the Persona games are stylish, they're not ugly to look at, they're inviting and they have really beautiful menus and they're very dynamic, right? I think if you had something that looked like that and that had a really good, cool, interesting narrative that was like the anime, and you were like, oh, I love these characters, I love spending time in this world, and then it had the same post game that every Pokemon game has as a game, I think that game would sell a lot better. I think a Pokemon game that looked sick and had a really, really cool trailer that was showing off this interesting, dynamic story is something that people would respond to. I really do.
I agree with you. I think that that's true. I think the in my ideal world, that is what they do with the, like, if it's a new Super Mario Bros. Thing. Because to me, the proof of concept game and like kind of with they themselves, Game Freak and Pokemon Company and Nintendo, how they're marketing their new games, their point of like inspiration right now is Zelda. It just is. Like every time they do the Breath of the Wild shot where the camera flies over the character and you look over the vista and they're like, yo, look, it's evoking the Breath of the Wild feeling. And if the game it feels like that to play and it's presented like that and all the other kind of stuff, I think that is a game that sells not just 20 million, but 40 million units. I think if Zelda goes from Ocarina of Time being their like tippity tip top game being 10 million across 3 different versions of the video game, I think Pokemon gets taken from 20 million to 40, and like that Zelda went from 10 to 30, you know.
And I think that's true. I think the problem they're
not good game developers. Yeah, exactly.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Yeah.
And I agree.
Said it, man.
Yeah. I agree with you. Yes. Right? All of this is something I agree with, and that's why I think that there's
you gotta let somebody else do it.
Exactly. But I think that the thing is, and this is something that I just broadly disagree with the community on. I think that the community is convinced that Game Freak doesn't care and that they're complacent. I think they care. They're just not good. I think that that's the thing. I think the fact that they keep trying to align themselves with Breath of the Wild in this way, and they are at the end of the day a Japanese studio that is very closely tied to Nintendo in this kind of way. I think that they see that game and they're like, man, why can't we do that? I think they feel like that.
I agree, and I disagree though that I do put the blame at I think the powers that be, because I don't think you put
the blame there. I'm just saying whenever that comparison gets made, or whenever somebody talks about where Pokemon's at, it's like, well, why wouldn't they? I mean, why would they try? It's because they keep selling blah, blah, blah. But I think that a lot of that comparison comes from like, well, they're not doing anything that the specific person might want them to do, but that doesn't mean they're not doing anything. You know, it's kind of like it's kind of like when people look at or initially, and it's kind of happening now with the Switch 2, but Switch 2 is a little different. But when people first saw the Joy-Con, right, and how much the Joy-Con cost, they were like, this isn't worth the amount of money that it costs. But the thing that they're not factoring in is the amount of tech that's in the Joy-Con. And you personally are like, well, I don't care about NFC. I don't care about NFC. I don't care about the accelerometer. I don't care about the gyroscope. I don't care about the fact that they're fitting all this tech in this small space. I don't want to pay for any of that. So therefore, it should be worth less. But that's not how manufacturing works. It costs what it costs, you know? So it's worth what it's worth. So what I'm looking at, even though I agree that they didn't stick the landing, I think them doing things like trying to make an open world video game is them striving for more. They're just not good enough to stick the landing on what they're striving for. I think they want more for themselves.
Well, I think there's no universe that they can achieve more without taking more time.
Yeah, they need to take. Yes, yeah.
You know, like that's
absolutely that's 100%.
The only way
better game developer.
yeah. But I think even the Breath of the Wild team with 3 years makes a much lesser game than Breath of the Wild, right?
Even
Tears of the Kingdom, which we brought up earlier, that was built on the shoulders of Breath of the Wild. That took the entire Switch's life cycle almost to come out.
So Breath of the Wild, we can't say for sure exactly how long that game as it exists now took to make, but they announced Zelda Wii U in 2011. And Breath of the Wild came out in 2017, right? Early 2017. Right. So that game took about
for that long.
It took about 6 years. Pokemon games, as Game Freak claims, in the modern era, take about 4 years to make. So, like, yeah, I think that they should take a little. Like, I think that they should. Like, I still contend they should take freaking Grand Theft Auto develop. I think they should take 8 years to make a video game. But that doesn't align with, and I think that they also feel like they need more time because they restructured how the rest of the IP works since the first time I talked about wanting Pokemon to change in 2015 and now. Because back then the anime was still like, it's Ash and we're going through the next at the time he was going through the Alola region, you know, he was becoming the Alolan champion when I made that video. Now the anime has almost nothing to do with the game in that sense. It's not like, well, this is the region that they're at and they're catching these Pokemon and they're here. And even before where the anime is now with Horizons, even in the age of Ash, they detach the anime from the games in that way.
Yeah, the last like 2 seasons were not like region
had
based.
Nothing to do with the games. And the card game is similar. Now the card game has since like it like has checkpoints of like where it is tied into the game, but most of the time when a card game release comes out, it's usually like retroactive in some way. It's like, yo, remember the partner Pokemon cards? We're doing it again, y'all. You know, now they're in a cycle where it's like mega evolutions. They're in because of a video game. And I think that they're still going to do that in some way. But I think that they themselves realize that they need to decouple themselves from the games. And I think that the way that the release cycles and COVID has part of blame for how the release cycles have happened as of late in terms of like the gaps in the releases and stuff like that. But I do think that they recognize that they need to take more time. And I think that Scarlet and Violet will the reception to Scarlet and Violet will mean that they're going to. I think that Scarlet and Violet,
man, I so hope so, but I'm so afraid because of how well it sold. I know it was such an embarrassment, and I do think that Nintendo, like, doing the whole, like, apology and everything, I could see them, like,
and Nintendo owns
putting their thumb on the scale a little bit.
They own a third of the company. And
you cannot release a game of that quality, right? Like, it tarnishes the Nintendo brand in a way that we're uncomfortable.
And it tarnishes the Pokemon brand.
It does.
And I think that a lot of people, and a big reason why we're even able to feel like that about Nintendo is because they've proven that they don't like sales isn't what drives them. Zelda didn't dip in sales when they made Breath of the Wild. They just were like, this doesn't serve us anymore. We don't think it's good enough. We don't think it's a grand enough franchise or IP as it stands to be in line with how we see it, and at large how the gaming community sees Zelda. Like before Breath of the Wild, people talked about Zelda like it was this mega blockbuster franchise, but it really wasn't.
People, you know what's the most interesting thing? Because that's still a thing with Metroid.
Yeah,
right.
Yes,
like people still think of Metroid as like, oh, Metroid is iconic,
this mega blockbuster thing. Yeah,
and it invented a whole genre. Well, half invented a whole genre.
Yeah,
but it like Dread outsold every other game in the franchise combined,
and it was like 4 million ish or something like that.
And
yeah,
that's one of those things where it's like, I mean, the fact that Pokemon can turn in a effort as like half baked as Scarlet Violet and have it sell that much really speaks to how ridiculously powerful the brand is.
Right.
And that I really think if you like,
but I
double down on making one game that is, concerned with prestige, like a game that could compete for Game of the Year, I think you would see an Animal Crossing situation or a Mario Kart situation.
I agree.
Where
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
One game sells 40 or 60 million instead.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I think you're dead right.
And the thing about Pokemon, and I think what's happening with Scarlet and Violet, I think there's just a because it's not like Scarlet and Violet sold what it sold day one and that's it. It continued to sell. So that means that the community at large, the people that bought the game, not necessarily like the Pokemon fans that we interface with as people that are like, in the trenches, as it were,
really
right?
Dialed in,
They bought the game because of like what it was. I can say, at least anecdotally, that again, all the people that I know as Pokemon fans that are not Pokemon fans TM that are dialed in, they were like impressed by the fact that it's like, oh, Pokemon's open world now? That's cool. I want to try that. Like that is what got them in. Like the performance was like, obviously they care, but it's not a deal breaker for them. It's not something
they don't care about it the way that like capital G gamers care
exactly.
about it.
And that's the thing. I think that and like we can't say for sure if they're able, like Game Freak and Pokemon Company and Nintendo are able to or not necessarily able to, but if they're parsing through it that same way, but I don't know. I haven't been given a reason to doubt that that's what it is. Like this isn't like the result of a long trend of them mailing in video games, because people feel the way that they feel about Pokemon games every time. It's like, you've been a Pokemon fan just as long as I have. You know that Pokemon games go through this cycle of like, oh man, and Scarlet and Violet is a notable version. I'm not saying it's as bad. I mean, other games are as bad, blah, blah, blah. But they go through the cycle of like everybody being like, this is way worse than the last game, or like this game.
Totally. Or it was not the first one to receive that criticism.
Or as people talked about Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, like that game sucked. And now they're like, man, they need to go back to making remakes like that. And like that's just like what Pokemon is. And they've been able to parse through that and still strive to improve on what they're doing, at least in their minds. They still have worked towards doing more. And I at least have been able to like map that. I've been able to see like in the DNA of these games as they progress, oh, they tried something here and they really liked how that worked out and they fleshed it out here. And then they tried this other thing and they fleshed that out more. Like how Pokemon games have developed in the entire history of them is they introduce an idea in one game and it might be poorly done or not fully thought out, but they bring it back and they do it better. That's just how it's always worked. And a big reason that people look at Pokemon like pixel art games in the way that they do is because they finally, and it took until Black and White 2, literally Black and White 2 specifically, and not to say that Black and White 2 and Black and White 1 are like very far from each other, but there is a noticeable like gap in terms of like execution. It took until then where they were masters at what they were doing. I think Game Freak starts everything that they do bad at it. And then they, like, by the end of it, like, they're at least competent or better than everybody else. In the sense of pixel art, they became better than everybody else in a lot of ways. Like some of the character animations that they do in pixel anime, it's ridiculous. Like the like something that I don't know if you watch, like what is that channel called? Easy not easy. What is the? It's like a video essay channel, and they break down like game design and stuff like that. But they do like frame by frame breakdowns, and one of the breakdowns that I'm gonna link you this video when I
please do. I would love to watch it.
But they break down like how impressive it is, the ball throwing animation and Pokemon Black and White too. Like, that's the kind of thing that Game Freak eventually gets to, because they do care. They're just bad. I think that that's what, like, how I view Game Freak because of their output. It's like,
I think what's frustrating to me is like, and don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. I think if you and I were going to like do a retrospective, if we want to go in and like dig in on every one of these games and point out all the myriad ways in which like they have issues, we could. I really fundamentally and I don't really care for Black and White. I'm not a big Black and White guy. I know a lot of people
Black and White 2 are the best Pokemon games that I've played so far.
And that is a popular opinion.
As far as like in the replay series so far, and I hold your thought real quick, I just want to give this context. So far every game, because a big reason why I'm doing it is because I want to call my own bluff. Like, am I right? Do I at least feel honest in when I say that I think Pokemon games from game to game in most ways improve fundamentally on the one that was before it? And so far that has been resoundingly true. The only time that I felt like that wasn't true was Gen 4. I think Gen 4 was the only time I was like, this game's bad in this way, and this way, and this way, and this way. But every game since then, I could present an argument why it's better than the last one.
You feel that way about all of Gen 4?
Yes. I play Platinum specifically. I'm not playing remakes. I'm not playing remakes I'm doing like,
I think you should, because I think Heart Gold and Soul Silver are, I think it's the like what you just said, right? Like the first one is always the bad one.
Yeah.
And I think that's where all of the promise of Gen 4 really comes together. And I think that is the best.
So I agree with you. I think that Heart Gold, Soul Silver are the better games, but the reason why I'm specifically doing Platinum, and I'm doing like whatever the best representation of a region and like generate, like that's what they presented. That's what they think of. This is Gen 1. This is Gen 2. This is Gen 3. This is Gen 4. It's like them handing in their final essay, you know? Whereas I think Heart Gold, Soul Silver is almost like, them kind of being able to like, I don't know if this comparison is going to land for you, but it's like the original releases of the game is like them writing a song and presenting the song, and Heart Gold, Soul Silver almost feels like a punch in. It's like them being like, all right, well, what would be a cool thing to say on this verse? All right, I say this part, and then I punch in again. I say, this would be a cool thing to follow up and say that next, instead of like following through on a vision as you're writing it and just letting it play out.
That comparison totally lands for me in terms of it as a comparison of Gen 2 and Heart Gold and Soul Silver.
Right.
I think where I would disagree with you is I think it is also independently of that a really meaningful step forward in solidifying all of the ideas that they were trying in Gen 4.
Yeah,
and I think that there are so many big changes to Pokemon that happen there that are still really important now.
Yeah,
like
I agree
that. I really do think that I think that those games are the only remakes that I think are
important to the DNA of Pokemon.
Yes. That's exactly what. Yeah,
I agree.
That's exactly.
Because I mean, a lot of what I've said, like in those original videos of like, I think like the partner Pokemon thing. I was like, yo, I think partner Pokemon should be in every Pokemon game ever. And now they are. But at the time, it was really just that game and Pikachu, kinda Pokemon Yellow. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I might go back and do remakes as a separate series, but
Okay.
I think that it's just cleaner to be like the critique of the community at large is that that Game Freak got lazy. And my retort to that is I don't think they got lazy. I think that they're just trying more and more new things, like more period and more new things. If that makes sense. Whereas
I
before,
totally agree with you. I don't think it's a laziness issue. I think it's that when they made the jump to 3D, they never. It was not a graceful jump
because they weren't able to have the same period of time to perfect that as they were with pixel art. They weren't given.
They did it since 1996.
5.5 generations, if we're counting Black 2 and White 2, of like them perfecting pixel art, right? And then they had 2 generations to do as much as they could with like standard definition 3D game animation. Game development, and then they had to jump into 3D. HD. Yeah, and now they're jumping in the open world. So I think that the time that it takes for them to like master that is going to be different.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable. I think the reason that I think, and there's another thing here that we haven't talked about that I do think is worth bringing up as well. But I think part of the reason I'm frustrated is that we are now 5 generations into the post pixel art, era,
right?
And I do not think there has been the same level of like clean, observable progress and growth.
Because like I mentioned, it's a break. It's not a clean
right. There's a break between Ultra Sun and Moon and
so exactly Ultra Sun and Moon, and I mean like a technical break. It's not like with 2D they very much so had this mostly the same target resolution for the vast majority of the time that they were developing pixel art video games, but for this they literally quadrupled their resolution in between their second 3D outing and their first HD one, so that's another thing that they have to adjust to. And not only did they do that break, but then they broke it again by doing open world, which is another level of like expertise that they have to attain. And
No, sorry. Finish your thought.
But yeah, that's more so what it is. Where it's like I think that they just were not able to evolve in the same way that they were in with sprite based video games. I think that it was kind of like them perfecting their craft in a kiddie pool in comparison, where like they were thrown in the shark infested waters. And I think that this is another video that I kind of want to make, where I think that I think Nintendo Switch kind of broke them because they were allowed to be a premium experience on handheld, and Nintendo Switch kind of broke the delineation that used to exist, where it's like, oh, it's a handheld game, like it's fine. I got Lego Star Wars on Game Boy Advance, and it is not the same game as Lego Star Wars on GameCube, but that's not true for Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is the same game docked as it is handheld. So when you put a Pokemon game in the way that it existed on handheld on a console, it doesn't feel like this is a console game, Yeah,
and I think that is kind of the crossroads they're at now, and we're a couple generations into the HD era now, and you got to just hope that now that it seems like they're locked into, obviously HD is not going to change fundamentally. And I think they are probably locked into this open world thing that, like, hopefully now they have the ability to just iterate on ideas, and we get to a point where
they get their Black 2, White 2 moment.
Yeah, and I hope that is in the cards, because I think my fear is that we're gonna just keep having the same conversation where it's like, the next one though, like look at all these, this one surely the next one will learn this better. Mm-hmm. And Scarlet and Violet was the first time where I was like, man, I don't know if they have it in them to make it better. And maybe that is to your point, that like they just don't have the talent that they need to realize a vision on the level of something like Breath of the Wild or Donkey Kong Bonanza.
So this
or
is
Mario
where I've
Odyssey.
always kind of been different from the Pokemon community. I don't do that. I don't think that and you'll push back on this, I'm sure, and I know you disagree before I even say it. I don't think a good Pokemon game exists. I think all of them are bad. I don't think that there's a single Game of the Year worthy Pokemon game to ever have existed ever.
I think those are two different statements, but I agree with.
But when I say good, that's what I'm saying. I'm talking about like a game that's like good in the arena that Pokemon exists in. Like a good game that's made by an indie has different expectations than a game that's made by Nintendo. And that's what I mean. It's like for the brand that is Pokemon, they don't have a game that is worthy of that brand. They just don't. And I think that it's going to be different for everybody because the way that you feel about the brand is like informed by the games in a lot of ways. But I just more so mean in a vacuum. I mean, like if you tell somebody, yo, this is the like objectively the most valuable entertainment brand in the world, and then you show them your favorite Pokemon game, it doesn't matter what it is, they would be like, what? This was made by the most valuable, like for the most valuable brand in the world.
I think I agree with you with the caveat of I don't think that was true during the pixel art era.
I think it was though, because like
for Gen 1 I'll give you, but I think Gen
and the
2
pixel era and the pixel art era, like Ocarina of Time existed, and that was the game that people were saying that's the best game to ever be made. And then like Grand Theft Auto became a thing, and that, you know, like it's
but Pokemon's not that, right? Like to your point, it was always a handheld franchise, which I think made that it inherently was gonna have,
right?
But I guess that's your point, though, right? Is that like Pokemon as a franchise is it's
bigger than that, and it's
so much bigger than what the games are.
Yes.
And I think that's just because of the fact that Pokemon is such a universally attractive idea.
Lily's here. Hello, we're recording a podcast though, but you can give your we're gonna wrap it up, man. but yeah,
hey, look. I'm not rushing you. Feel free to take your time. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But I just thought Pete might have been joining us today, which I was cool with too.
I mean, Pete, if you got time, we're going to do Chiyu and some other stuff. But yeah, what were you saying? What was your point? I didn't want to.
I'll be right back. Y'all do your thing.
Okay.
Cool, man.
It's funny that I was like, yo, maybe we got to talk about other stuff to like.
Yeah, right. Like we wouldn't talk about Pokemon for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'll tell you what, I lost my train of thought.
It was about the handheld thing, and you were saying,
yes, yeah, I think, and I hear what you're saying. I guess with the idea that like it being the most successful entertainment franchise in the world has to do more with the I think inherent like stickiness of Pokemon as an idea, and the fact that like the initial elevator pitch for Pokemon is such a universally appealing idea. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of the few really big marquee, not even just video game franchises, right? But like any entertainment franchise.
You know what Pokemon feels like to me? It feels like a movie game. Like, you know how like pre freaking Batman Arkham, you know, it's like you see the movie and you're like, man, that's so sick, they got a video game for this, and then you buy the video game and the video game sucks. You know,
well, the Arkham games are great.
No, that's why I said before Arkham. I think Arkham was the first good licensed game, and then most other IP realized, wait, we got to be good if we use a license. That's crazy. You know.
Yeah, and I think like what I was driving to is I feel like so much of why Pokemon resonates is because it's appealing to like everyone. Like it is one of the few big franchises that like isn't gendered in any way, really. Mm-hmm. Like there are a ton of Pokemon that I think are like they look cool or scary or cute or ugly, and it's like the fact that it's so easy to see yourself in Pokemon because so much of it is about like the Pokemon you choose and the type that you like or whatever. Mm-hmm. Right? It's so easy to orient yourself in that world and feel like you're a part of it, that it's like it's no surprise that it appeals to everybody on some level, you know?
That's a big thing that I'm like, yo, something that I hammered in the video is the idea of fidelity. And I don't mean visual fidelity. I mean like fidelity in terms of like how accurate the gameplay experience is to the way that you think about the game. And this doesn't even necessarily have to do with like turn-based versus not turn-based or whatever, but it's a thing of like in the Pokemon IP outside of the video games, there's not just you're not just Ash, you know. Brock exists and he has his own expertise and like aspirations. Nurse Joy exists, Officer Jenny exists, Professor Oak exists, but we don't really get to engage with any other element of the Pokemon world. And I think that people love those different aspects of the Pokemon world as well. And I think that
that's
Pokemon
why I think Concierge was so cool.
I think that's another example of that. And I think
Slice of life.
I think Pokemon Company understand. Yes. And so that's another part of it for me. It's like I think the ideal Pokemon game isn't this like it's not and I don't mean this gameplay wise. I mean like in like structure. It's not an RPG. It's a slice of life thing. It's not like hear me out.
I know, I totally agree with you, actually.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't think that Pokemon games should be like, all right, the point is kill God, and also there's like a crime syndicate and become the best in the world. Yep. I think Pokemon should be, it's like, yo, you're in this world, you were born in like whatever region you want to be, and like, you want to be a breeder, that's cool. You want to be a gym leader, that's cool. You want to be a professor, that's cool. You want to, you want to be a Pokemon trainer, that's also cool. And I think that the Pokemon game should be able to facilitate that. I think that would be like the ideal world. I think that is the Pokemon game that, forget 40 million units. I think that sells 100 million units. Like,
I think my ideal vision of it is a very similar game with a very different execution, which is I brought up Persona earlier, and I think if you did like that and brought in like the
like going to school and like, should I study or should I socialize or should I, yeah.
Exactly. And having a calendar system where there's like, you could go and be like, and the way that you would get deeper into those other aspects of the world is like, you could go and spend some of your time with a character who is a breeder, and you go through that whole thing and you help them with what they're doing, and that gives you some gameplay benefit. And the fact that it is like, tell all these interesting slice of life stories, have these like interesting characters, and then also have that just feedback into the RPG, because that's like the most satisfying, most of the most satisfying RPGs to me have a loop like that, right? Where it is, there's the combat and the gameplay stuff that's moving you forward, but then it's also like the ways in which you are interacting with the world and interacting with other characters and making it feel like you have an impact on the world, right? And that your choices matter, and that you and I can play the same game for 100 hours and make different choices. And you're like, oh, I never even met the breeder. I was hanging out with Nurse Joy. Like I went and was a deputy with Officer Jenny, and I had this totally different experience than you had because of the choices I made and what interested me as a player.
Right.
And I think that would be so cool.
And I think the balance is, and that's another thing for me as far as the term, because I don't even know. I can't even imagine how they do something like this in the way that I'm about to explain it. The thing about Pokemon games to me, when I think about them, is I think holistically they're like fun. But like, if I'm being philosophical about it, it's like, it's kind of not, but it is. It's like, it's fun when you think about it cerebrally. Like the way that I describe it and how I like talked about it in Donkey Kong Bonanza. Donkey Kong Bonanza is monkey brain fun. It's just fun. It's fun in the way that bouncing a ball is fun. It's fun in the way that getting on a roller coaster is fun. But like Pokemon is fun if you're like, well, yeah, the team building is fun, and then you do that, and then you battle the thing, and then like my Pokemon's different than everybody else's Pokemon, and I'm playing this game with my friends, and I battle, and I do, like all the things that you explain what Pokemon is together holistically can be described as fun. But to me, it's like, I think what would improve Pokemon is if every element of that by itself can be described as being fun. Like when I was playing through Pokemon, to give you more of an example, I was playing through Pokemon X and Y, and I had so much fun just doing the Battle Chateau stuff. Like me and my friend Colton, who was also doing this series with me, once went to like diverged into like multiple games. So like I played Y, he played X, you know, like that kind of thing. We just spent so much time just being like, I just want to grind the Battle Chateau, see how much money I can get, see how high of a rank I can get, and we played through the mini games and we did all the ancillary stuff because it was just fun to play. But that negatively impacts the RPG because it makes the rest of the game frictionless. Like the like quote unquote like fun that we tried to make in the Elite Four was like, how fast can we dumpster this thing? It wasn't, there was no challenge involved, and that's not something that I necessarily want, but it was it was kind of me trying to make the best of a bad situation. Like
I think that and this, I'll take the pin out of it. I said this earlier. I think there's a part of this conversation that we're not talking about enough, which is that I think that's the other problem with Pokemon is that, like, I don't think that turn-based combat is boring. I think that Pokemon, like, in the AI of the trainers are just bad. Like,
I think even good AI is like doesn't really solve the problem that I specifically am trying to describe. Because again, I've played competitive. Like somebody
you said you think that's fun though, right? You think competitive is fun. I think if every battle in the game had the same stakes as a competitive battle, the game would be more fun.
I think that competitive is fun in the way that I was describing fun before, where like if I think about it holistically, it's fun because it's like and that's kind of why I personally burned out on the draft battle thing, because like I don't think like the minute to minute of it is fun, and I think that it got the at least my experience with it. I don't want to like get super specific because I don't want to like feel like I'm calling anybody out. But I felt like I wasn't having fun with it because it got sweaty, and I think Pokemon when it's sweaty is not fun. Like me, like when I'm watching like Pokemon,
dude,
specifically,
it's so funny because I feel that way about fighting games, and you're such a fighting game guy.
But that's the thing,
and I totally respect that.
No, but here's the thing. Here's the thing, right?
When they get sweaty. So I'm bad.
So with Pokemon games, right, I wouldn't even describe myself as bad at Pokemon. But the thing about fighting games is I can have fun either way. Like I can have fun if it's like, oh yeah, let's turn on items and let's do the silly, goofy, wacky thing or whatever. Like I have fun regardless, right? The thing about Pokemon is like I think it's even more fun to watch when it's not sweaty. Like I have so much fun watching like when like a Ludwig or like Point Crow or whatever, they do their like creator tournaments or whatever, because it's fun watching them be like, I just like this Pokemon, I just think he's cute, so I'm gonna use this Pokemon, and then they pair them up with a competitive player to like try to get them to make that work. You don't actually see that in VGC. Like to what your point was earlier, you do see a little bit of that where it's like, well, you know, I just kind of want to see if I can make Fletchling work in this tournament or whatever, right? But like in those creator centric tournaments, it's literally 6 Pokemon that they pick because they're their favorites, and that was the only thought process behind it.
Criteria.
Yeah. And it's fun trying to watch them figure out how to win with that, right? Whereas like VGC to me, it's less fun to watch and engage with because it's so repetitive. Like
that's the thing I think is interesting too, right? Because like VGC is the like that's the esport. Yeah. But like if you get into like single Smogon tournament rules, like there's so much of that, right?
I play Showdown too, man. That like
I meant like I love low tier play. Like I love getting into like the RU meta is so fun because it's just all these random garbage Pokemon that have these weird abilities and stuff that you never see. Right.
And it's just like the part of it that's missing for me is like I want the hype moment that I get when it's like, oh shoot, Little Mac won an A tier. You know, it's the anime moment of like Ash beat the Pokemon League and he has Pikachu. You know, like you see his freaking team in black and white. You know, like, and it doesn't even necessarily just have to be execution, but it's just hype seeing new things happen, and it's so much harder for new things to happen when it's math, because it's math.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I get what you're saying. Yeah, I think it's just at a certain point, like it either hits for you or it doesn't. Right. You know, and I think in the same way that like there are a lot of I think it's funny that we got to this place where it's like I totally to me, it is fun either way.
Yeah,
right. Like
fair.
I love doing random battles on Showdown too because I love.
That's like all I do when I'm on Showdown now.
You know,
it's like, yeah.
I think that's such a fun experience. You know, but yeah. I don't know, man.
But yeah, I mean, I don't want to get in the weeds because I think it'll start another conversation. But I just to like further like elaborate on like how I feel or why I feel the way that I do is like it kind of frustrates me when I'm looking at them talk about like the diversity, like the commentary. But like, look at how diverse the player, like the character pool is for this game, and then you'll see 2 Pokemon that have over 30% usage, and this is a game that has 600 characters in it, right? And I'll look at something like Smash that also breaks down those usages, like those player to character usage breakdowns. And the highest percentage usage for a character, Steve, is at 4.5%. That's the that's the most used character in the video game. And Smash Brothers has 80 characters. Pokemon has 1,000, but 600 usable in Scarlet and Violet, and that is the part of it. And as far as like fidelity is concerned, that I like lament about it. And it is also the thing of like I personally do like playing games like that, but at the heart of it, it is my desire to like see more of the designs that I like. I like the world because I like the way that the world, like the characters are designed. I think that that's cool and fun and interesting. And I just wish there was a way that every Pokemon could actually be viable.
Yeah, and I think that's the tough thing of it when you have a game that is so like stat oriented.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you want to have 1,000 Pokemon, they can't all be viable. And I think that's where like the fun of like the Smogon community comes in and stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, like you just establish like lower tiers and you have different like or like Little Cup and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, you create your own fun. Yeah. And I have friends that are Pokemon players that believe that is something that the game should be criticized for. That like the reason Pokemon competitive is fun is because of the community, not because of the game.
Yeah.
But hey, you know, I think that's where the comparison of, to me, like chess or poker or any of those kinds of things come in, because it's a similar thing, right? Where it's like the fun of it is the framework under which we're operating, right? Like it's like, and I guess to bring back up like the sports thing, right? Where it's like it's the fun of like, you know, like like a game of basketball is the same every time, except for like when you do the All-Star game or the dunk champion or the dunk, you know, thing or whatever, right? Like you can have these ways to play up different angles of it and, you know, celebrate like the less, you know, represented parts of the game.
If you're not LeBron or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. And I guess ultimately too, like that I think plays into your criticism of Game Freak overall. And I think that that's fair. And I guess for me, it's like what the game is and what it is at its best is like deeply satisfying to me.
Yeah,
and
which is fair.
A lot of the most fun I've had in competitive multiplayer has been that style of experience. And I think it's in the same way that like I'm sure you would say that of playing Smash, right? And for me, Smash is ideally, right, like items on and 8 people shoved in a room and we're trading the bottom controller and everybody kind of sucks and maybe one person's actually good.
Yeah, and that's why I love Smash. That's why I use Smash as an example, because it is everything. It's all of that. It's all of it. Whereas Pokemon as it stands is one thing. And in this framework, in this way, the way that we're communicating, and and that's why I said like, and again, it's just the perfect example because it is like it's kind of like the realization minus the support that the company doesn't give it. At least it's the realization of what I think the perfect world of Pokemon is. Melee is VGC. It still exists. It still has a relatively vibrant community. Like the biggest Melee tournament is literally also bigger than the biggest VGC tournament. But it's a community that like they're like, nah, we like the game the way that it was when they made this in 2001. So we're going to keep playing it in the way that they made it in 2001. And I think that's what VGC would be. It just would be with the new Pokemon also added and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is like I think I want to keep seeing the development of that system.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't want to exist in a world where
I think that it would. And just like look at like literally right now at Champions. We have ZA and they said, all right, here's this new battle system and there's new Pokemon that's in this game. But wait, also the new Pokemon that's in this game is in Champions. I don't see that there's nothing that precludes them from being like Gen 10, it's in Greece or whatever. And here's the new fire starter and blah, blah. And if Gen 10 has this different battle system, it's so much easier for them to be like, all right, what if abilities don't exist in the same way that they used to or whatever, it's so much easier for them to like do that retroactively and say like, okay, well, this will have this stat spread and this move pool and this ability and put that in the old framework than the opposite is.
Yeah, just have a team that's what they do.
Yeah.
You know?
Because literally fans will do that anyway. Even if for whatever reason Pokemon is like, nah, we don't want to do that, which I don't think is what needs to or should or will happen. Fans ultimately will be like, well, we're going to do it because they do it now. They're like, oh, well, I really like the Pokemon Emerald art style and I like the that region and that story. So I'm going to mod in the Pokemon that exist in the newer games and the mechanics as they work in the newer games, but in the framework of Gen 3. And I think that like a new thing, like only makes it so that everybody gets something new that they like. Whereas keeping it the way that it is makes it so that only people that currently like it a lot get to have the experience that they like a lot, if that makes sense.
To be fair, though, that is 90 million players across the Nintendo Switch generation. So obviously,
well, it's not 90 million players.
Well, not 90 million units sold.
Yeah, but again, the 90 million, a lot of that I would argue is owed to them trying new things. Because it wasn't 90 million on Nintendo DS, and Nintendo DS sold more, you know? So it can't be because I've seen that argument be presented by other people where they're like, well, it's because Switch sold more. And it's like, no, because there's not a single Nintendo DS Pokemon game that sold 20, 30 million units, but the Nintendo DS sold more.
That's true. I think the pushback I'd offer there is that I think the DS didn't have the same attachment rate that the Switch does, right? Because the DS exists in a very interesting point in history, right? Like,
so the thing about the attach rate with the DS, like with this comparison, the Switch has a higher attach rate, but like if you have a DS, the game that you have, if you have more than one game, is you have Pokemon, you have Mario. You know,
I don't think so because I think I'm saying you, the royal.
Yeah, I know.
I think you forget that a huge part of the DS's rise was that it was in a pre-smartphone era, and they like created and cornered the casual market. Right. Like Brain Age was a huge seller on that system. And there were a lot of people that like, you know, like that was like a talking point in the same way that it was with the Wii, where it's like there's senior citizen homes that have a Wii and all it has is Wii Sports. That was very much a thing with the DS and Brain Age and Sudoku and these things that are not Pokemon and Mario and whatever.
But I would push back on that a little bit and say Pokemon never really was on a like mainline Pokemon has never really been on a on a console. And I say console like handheld and dedicated.
Yeah, any device.
Like it never was on one that sold less than 80 million units. So it was never really limited by the amount of people, because the lowest one that it was on is the 3DS, right? And the 3DS was like 77 million, I think.
I believe that's correct. I'm pulling it up right now so I can have the comparison.
I would also say that a lot of that is because of Pokemon. It's like it's not even like people bought Pokemon because they have Game Boys. They have Game Boys because they bought Pokemon. So Pokemon was never limited by the amount of people that could play it. It's only limited by the amount of people that choose to play it. Because everybody knows what Pokemon is. They know when new Pokemon games come out. It's not a mystery to them.
So I I would say you're mostly correct there, but I think when you do look at the DS and the 3DS and the Game Boy Advance, right? Like they
Game Boy Advance
legit,
like 110 million, I think.
Game Boy Advance is 85. Or no, 81 is what I'm seeing.
Okay.
Yep, yeah, that's from Nintendo.
Okay.
So 81 and 75. Not that those are low numbers, but they are literally half of the attach rate of the Switch and the DS. So I do think that you're spot on when it comes to the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color. I think that Pokemon is the only reason that is in the top 5 best-selling consoles of all time.
Oh, I was thinking Game Boy. The number that I gave before. Game Boy's at 118 million.
118 million, yeah. And that's across the Game Boy and the Color, obviously.
Right.
You think about it too, right? Like that console was on the market for a really, really long. That's another element there. Like that thing came out in 89.
Right.
Pokemon gave it a whole second life. Our generation.
Yeah.
The only reason we played
it was a Tetris machine, and then it became a Pokemon machine.
Exactly.
But yeah.
So I think that what you're saying, like definitely, like point heard. I do think that it is I think that the Nintendo Switch, the engagement of that audience is not an insignificant reason for the success of not just the 2 biggest successes,
but all of
Sword.
Yeah, that's definitely
the fact that every one of the games was like 16 million ish plus, where every other Pokemon game, like aside from the first couple, topped out at around that much is like, it's just something that comes up a lot in terms of like the sales of Pokemon games. I think that it's sort of easy to track what the difference maker was for a game, right? I think that like the hardcore Pokemon community has a tendency to be like, see, look, like I'm a hardcore Pokemon fan, and like Pokemon Red and Pokemon, Silver, and like insert high selling Pokemon game, right? But what is solely like what their like dedication is, like you can illustrate that with, is the remakes. It's the Pokemon Emeralds. It's like Pokemon, the thing that makes the difference for a 20 million selling Pokemon game is the casuals. The thing that makes the Pokemon Emerald sell what Pokemon Emerald is that hardcore audience. And like obviously there's like casuals that buy into that as well. But I think that Pokemon fans tend to feel like they're the reason why the games sell like they do. But I think that what Pokemon fandom is more than just what we think of when we talk about Pokemon Worlds or whatever. And that's absolutely really just what it is. It's so much bigger than that. Yeah, and I think to put a period on this, like I think to compare, just to play the numbers game, right? Pokemon Platinum, right? 7 million units.
Yeah, and that's a Pokemon game that people have contended, and that's part of why I played it, because I never played. I played Diamond and Pearl as a kid, and I didn't like it, so I didn't go back and I didn't play Platinum.
You and 10 million other people.
Yeah, I was like, this game sucks. And then Platinum came out, and then I was like, I don't want to do that again. But yeah,
and again, your point. Black and White 2, 7.6 million.
Yeah,
right.
Yes, and these are games that Pokemon fans say are the best.
Sure, and then Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, 9.23 million.
Yes.
So all of those games, right? Like the worst selling Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch is Legends Arceus with 14.83 million units. And we talked about how that game,
the worst selling one was Let's Go.
Not according to the list I'm looking. Okay. Let's Go's got 15. But they're neck and neck, right? So either way, those two games, which are spin-offs of the main franchise, sold 15 million units, and that's better or roughly the same as every other mainline game on those other platforms that had the same attach rate.
Right.
So that, I would definitely argue that the Nintendo Switch being so successful, and not just successful in terms of units sold, but it was like a device that everybody wanted to play. They wanted games for it. They were excited to engage with it like every day. I think that it was
definitely a high tide raises all boats. But I'm more so saying that the delta is what I'm saying can't be like attributed to Switch, because like that's also true for Zelda, right? Like look at the average sales of Zelda games, we brought up Metroid before. And then look at the lowest selling Zelda game compared to the highest selling Zelda game. It's like you look at I think that, well, right now the lowest selling one's Echo of Wisdom. I would assume it's like 2 million last time I saw, or something like that. And the highest selling one's 30 million. But if you look at other platforms, the lowest selling Zelda games probably under 1 million, and the highest selling Zelda games like 10, you know? So it's like, yeah, there's definitely a like an increase there, but I'm just saying the gap is like more so.
I mean, think about it. You brought up Ocarina of Time, right? Is one of the most iconic games of all time. Was the best-selling game in the franchise.
So 10 million across all those editions. Like,
according to the list I'm looking at, it's 14 million. But even so, think about that.
It's combined with the N64 version, the 3DS version, Virtual Console.
Combined, it still sold less than some of them like middle Pokemon games on this generation.
Exactly, the worst selling Pokemon game on this generation. But
I think that
I think it's a lot of different factors all coalescing, and I think that it's just inverted. I think the people think that they're the most important, whatever fan base thinks that they're the reason why it's successful, and I don't think that's true.
Nothing this successful. That's the case.
Yeah.
It has to appeal to multiple different types of players.
Exactly. So hopefully when ZA comes out, it appeals to both of us. Or maybe one of us loves it and one of us hates it. I hope it's flipped. I hope you love it and I hate it. Honestly, that would be a more interesting episode when we talk about it again.
I think any of the 3 outcomes will lead in a very interesting conversation between them.
Yeah, either way, we're going to talk about it 2 more hours next time.
Because I think even if we both like it, we'll be like, this is why it's good, and it'll be a totally different answer.
I think that there's ways to look at it and see, personally. I think that because the way that people talk, like I agree with you about all the things you like about Arceus, all the things that people say that like are reasons why Arceus is good. I agree. I just think that it does that, and that's all that keeps me on board. And the things that would have made me like traditionally like a Pokemon game is missing. So it's like I think that there's a high possibility that like in the best case scenario, if we both, if you like ZA, this isn't the best case scenario, but if you like ZA and I don't necessarily think that it'll be for different reasons. I think it'll just be like we were looking for different things. Where like in this example with Arceus, I'm looking for more, and you got enough of what you were looking for. If that makes sense. I don't want to mischaracterize what you're saying. And that's what it is. I hope that they provide us both everything that we want. But we'll talk about it next time when that game actually comes out. Well, hopefully, actually the game's like 2 months away. So yeah, probably next time. I was going to say, hopefully you're on between now and then, but it's 2 months. 2 months, not that bad. It's not 2 years.
I'll definitely be back in October.
Yeah. All right. We'll have you back on later. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. We're gonna go and do all the stuff. Watch on Twitch if you want to partake in the extracurricular activities. Goodbye.